They are gathered in the church paying attention. Claus's skill evaluation will finally be announced. Automatic mode, those who saw it know it's a new skill, as they've never heard of it before. Exceptionally rare, he's the first to possess something like this. He should definitely join the Knight's Order. Others say the Capital's Guild will end up recruiting him. Knowing it's unique, he imagines it might be quite strong and powerful. Perhaps this is the beginning of his journey to become a star, a great adventurer. Inside the foggy forest, he's thinking at least that's what he thought would happen. 3 years have passed, he's 18 years old and at level 10. Automatic mode is more or less like this. There's automatic return, which takes him back home automatically, returning from dungeons or any other place. He can also travel automatically to any place he's visited, but it only works for places he knows, and because of that, he's been stuck at a low level for 3 years. His teammates consider him a useless leech. It's a common topic for him. They didn't want to kick him out of the team to avoid looking bad. They wanted him to leave on his own. No one will stop him if he wants to leave. They just make him want to quit. But his determined gaze says otherwise. After dealing with several goblins, a huge creature appeared. The field boss, a wicked hobgoblin. Brandishing his sword, he says it's time to finish this mission. He left his team and now does missions alone. Being an adventurer has been like this for the past 3 years. He managed to dodge the first attack and prepared a piercing strike. But the creature was already ready to hit him again, and he moves toward it. They pass each other. This last move proved effective. He managed to defeat the creature. After all the action, he's very tired and panting, but the hobgoblin had fallen. With his knife, he started to open the creature's carcass, extracting a hobgoblin's magic stone. It's really much bigger than a goblin's, so it should do the job. With the hilt of his sword, he crushed the stone and an energy emerged from it. Absorbing it, he leveled up and got a slight upgrade in his basic attributes. This made him very happy. It's been a long time since he last leveled up. He thought he'd be stuck at 10 forever. Although everyone who started with him is around level 50, envying them won't change his situation. Now he has 19 free attribute points. Now he can unlock level 3 of the automatic mode. Confidently, he'll use those points to gain this new skill. Before confirming, he begs for it to be something good. Remembering all the comments he had heard about having a useless skill, he raises his finger toward the sky, hoping for something useful this time. Then he finally confirms in the system and the new skill appears. His eyes sparkle, automatic resources, but he has to collect automatically. His hands on the ground bear the weight of his frustration. Collecting resources automatically, it's not really useful. Once again, the boy is in shock with what he got. All he can do is smile, as expectations without results only lead to frustration, as the saying goes. It would be nice if something came along to level up automatically or heal automatically, but now he's going to end his workday. Using automatic return, he saw it would take 35 minutes to get home. He activates the skill, and the time counts down on the system clock. As soon as the time is up, he finds himself in front of his residence. Before even announcing his arrival, the door had already been opened. It's his 14-year-old half-sister Liz who greets him. He apologizes for being late, saying he had a small expedition, while she complains that her brother is all dirty again. She pushed him to the bathroom to clean up before dinner, which he thanked her for as well for her hard work. At dinner, they'll have rye bread with a cabbage and bacon stew. He left the bath, saying he needed to dry his hair before eating, but his sister insists he eats right away because she'll dry his hair herself. He says he can do it, but she insists he should eat while it's hot, as she had put it on the stove just so he could eat it warm. 1 spoonful should already make him feel better, so his lips tighten. Saddened, he asked if she had noticed, and she said yes, as she is his sister, wanting to know if it's about his work as an adventurer. She asks if it's about his unique skill, and he confirms, apologizing since he never makes much money and always causes problems. Her father didn't return from the war, and his father, who married her mother, is missing, so it's his responsibility to support the household. Before he could finish speaking, she hugs him, asking if he feels better now. He felt uncomfortable because he shouldn't be happy touching her chest, but Liz says he got it wrong. She is the one who can't work because she's underage and feels that she's the one causing problems. She asked him not to worry about his skill anymore. He's almost 15 now, the age to discover his own skill, and if it's good, she will support him. But for now, he can have this. He was embarrassed, and so was she. When he went to ask why, Liz ran off, stating she had to go to sleep. But before leaving, she says she never asks for more than this, that he comes home. So she wished him good night, and he sighed deeply, thinking about how clever the little brat is. However, he feels much better and will work even harder the next day. Yet, at that time, he hadn't realized. His unique and rather strange skill only reaches its full potential when he hits level 13. Its true potential is that he will always automatically achieve his goal. The next day, he is in the poisonous swamp, a resource field. He has no idea what happened, but there are 30 antidote herbs. He went to that place to complete a herb gathering mission. Then he opened the system to clear his doubts until he saw something interesting. There is a very detailed list with all the available resources. It's impossible. It even allows him to select the quantity. Selecting 30, he saw that it would only take 4 minutes. That's absurd, as it would usually take nearly 10 seconds for each one. Way too fast. But when the time ended, he saw it was true, which could only be a joke. He tried the rarer herb, the petrification one, 10 units, and after almost 9 minutes, he had completed the task. He decided to try with the male grass, which is even rarer, and after 15 minutes, he already had all 10. Excited, he tried with the dragon herb, one of the rarest, only to discover it would take over 5 days. Makes sense, as it could be far from there. The problem is him waking up in a place he doesn't know. Thinking it through, that time is what's needed until the herb could be collected. And if that's really the case, he went to the Wailing Canyon, which is a place with various rare plants. It's a bit of an unpopular spot since it's highly poisonous, so he's wearing a mask, which will last almost 2 hours. Everything he could gather there is much more valuable until he found mandrakes in the system, a legendary item worth 10 times its weight in gold. It would only take 23 minutes to collect it, so he activated the skill. Time passed quickly. Gradually, his eyes opened, and in the palm of his hands there was a mandrake. He begins to celebrate happily over his achievement. Meanwhile, a huge creature emerged from the rocks. He keeps celebrating until his senses, which are at level 2, warn him of the danger. The creature's massive maw was already close to him, making him scream in desperation. A B-ranked monster, the rock lizard. Alert to the danger, he dodged the creature's tail. He looked at it completely frightened. A B-ranked creature wasn't supposed to be in that place. It would surely be his end. He closed his eyes, apologizing to his sister. Then he remembered her happy. The moments they shared and how she would be left alone, he needed to react. It was impossible he had thought of giving up. He promised he wouldn't leave her alone and would return home even if the odds were against him. Now he was determined to survive. But soon, the creature turned its face to the other side, surprising him. It seemed visibly disturbed by something, until he noticed he was holding the mandrake, and when he pointed the root at the creature, cowered even more. That small item, it's impossible that it did that, which made him imagine the possibilities. The scream of the mandrake reduces the life of anyone who hears it, but when he collected it, he was unconscious. In other words, the one nearly dying is the lizard. This is the start of his comeback. The one who had a useless skill, who was looked down upon by others. Now he has a chance to go to the top, and he's returning home with the lizard's head, being joyfully welcomed by his kind half-sister. Birds land on the roof to sing. This is the Adventurers Guild building, which is being cleaned inside. A young woman stretches her arms. This is Tareen, the receptionist. Very excited, she hopes to do her best today. Some receptionists are quite tired. Tareen says they are the face of the guild and should be more fit for work. But they have been working a lot. Still, she says they need to look graceful. All because of some adventurers who suddenly showed up with various items. It's a lot of work to catalog everything. She advised them to wash their faces. Then they noticed that the person she looked after hadn't shown up for some time. Claus, the low-ranking veteran. As she thought of him, someone entered the guild happily, greeting everyone. It's Claus opening the door with great joy. Loaded with items, he is now at level 19. That unusual scene left the receptionists thoughtful. To their displeasure, he has many items, which means they'll have a lot of work. He even has a stone lizard head with him. While they groan, Tareen greets him. She smiles at him with great joy and kindness. She hadn't heard from him in days and was worried. Claus replied that he went to the poisonous swamp and the Gorge of Woes, much to their surprise. She points out that he arrived without an appointment, which makes the other receptionists happy, thinking they won't need to work. However, she's soon by the counter, asking if it's really a stone lizard, since it's a rare material that needed to be stored immediately. She also says his safe return is the top priority. Claus has something else to say as well. He also has a mandrake. He'd like to send that too. Turian's foot hit the ground so hard that besides breaking it, it startled the boy. She has no idea how he managed that. To everyone's surprise, she called him to follow her to her office. She drags him there and Claus says he did nothing wrong. But the other receptionists say he'll have to prove it. The door closed with great force. He's in the guildmaster's office and his records are being reviewed. He's a D-rank adventurer and is very anxious. Madame Salazar observes him while sipping her tea. He wasn't called there to be scolded for doing something wrong. Sipping her tea, she says she called him to praise him given the hard work he's been doing. But there's something that needs to be resolved, and the mandrake is on a tray. This is not an easy item to find. They want to know where and how he got his hands on something like that. Faced with this unexpected inquiry, he became very nervous. He told them he found it in the Gorge of Woes purely by luck. Once again, they ask if that's really all. After the intense session, he's outside, completely joyful. Celebrating, he can't wait to tell Liz he didn't need to lie, just admitted the truth about his skill. With a pouch full of coins, he felt he got nervous for nothing. He'd earned 22 gold coins, enough to buy a total of 220,000 rye loaves. Liz would be very happy about that. The old lady said the retail price of the mandrake would be 250 gold coins, but the guild's price to resell the item is 65 coins, and they don't have that amount on hand right now. Given this, she suggested he exchange it for items of interest to him. He got 13 magic stones besides the lizards, which was bigger than expected. With all that, he could level up even more. As he leaves happily, someone watches him through the window. Something is wrong. He was useless until yesterday, and now he shows up with an S-rank item. Not to mention a D-rank like him defeated a B-rank creature. As gold, silver, and copper. He asked Tareen to keep an eye on him, as he might be someone they could rely on in the future. They need to assess the situation. She responds positively, saying she won't let him out of her reach. In a mountainous place, he turns on his helmet's light, a place hated by beginners, the unprofitable Twilight Mine. He has already seen what automatic gathering can do and wonders about the other gathering options. Now at level 27, he wants to see what he can mine there. However, a mysterious figure continues watching him from a distance. Thousands of years ago, it was created by dwarves who mined mithril there. Today, it's mined for glowstones. These stones function as a light source. They are indispensable, but only worth a few copper coins depending on their size. But now he has a secret weapon and asks the system to show him his options there. Even near the entrance, it would take 4 minutes to mine 20 large glowstones. Happy with that, he started automatic gathering mode. Cheerfully, he ordered his pickaxe to roar as it's going to work hard today. The woman watching him noticed that he talks to himself a lot. She's only doing this because her sister asked, not knowing why someone of her rank has to spy on that newbie. In a short time, she let her guard down. He had disappeared. She came out of her hiding spot with her daggers ready. She started walking around looking for him as he was there just a moment ago. Then she heard a nearby sound. He's already high up in the cave and she has no idea how he got there so quickly. Determined to follow him, she takes the same path. There's no way he's leaving her behind. She's a mid-rank adventurer. She won't be shaken off so easily. The scene itself is bizarre. He leaps across rocks with impressive skill, reaching an even higher spot. They remain far apart, but she can't believe the beginner did all that. She just wants to know what on earth this guy is. Now he's mining and the automatic gathering time is almost up. As the time runs out, his eyes open and now he has 20 large glowstones. He looks at them with the same surprise he felt last time and smiles in relief. This is wonderful. His skill had worked really well. He already has 20 and he needs 200 to complete the mission, which he'll do in no time. But his skill led him to a place so rich in these stones that he wouldn't even need to use his skill there. The stones here are huge and enormous, which surprises him even more. The stones he's finding are even bigger than he expected. He says he and his sister will eat well tonight, while the girl wonders why he talks to himself so much. The mission was completed, and he collected more stones than necessary. His bag was overflowing with them. As he sits, he acknowledges how useful this skill is. But there's still a catch. There are many ores that could be mined there, such. The available options are based on his previous encounters with these minerals. Just because they're available for gathering doesn't mean it would be easy. The gathering time for some is extremely high. He got lucky with the mandrake. However, the spirit gem is an S-level item and would take just over half an hour to gather. It's a highly sought-after item by mages and has a very high value. He shouts excitedly about this, startling the girl spying on him, thinking she missed something. This item might be in the catacombs, as they say these gems are crystallized human souls usually found in cemeteries. He needs to think carefully about what to do now. This will be a life or death decision, and he still doesn't know if it's worth the risk. Problems arise when he wakes up. Last time, he only survived due to the mandrake's effect. Unlike last time, he's now at a much higher level 27. He's improved his sword skill, bought a better dagger, and his level 3 senses don't warn him of any danger there. And even though he hasn't tried yet, he has a hidden card. Thoughtful, this isn't an easy decision to make. But it's a low-level dungeon, there's no other place with such low risks. Then a great commotion occurs in the cave. A skeletal knight attacked the girl, leaving him completely terrified. He is cornered and frightened, while the girl prepares to fight the creature. As he screams, the weapons clash. Half an hour ago, he used his automatic collection skill. Time passed, and as usual, he woke up. His facial expression was one of pure surprise. There was a rare gem in his hand. He was overwhelmed with happiness at the sight of it. He started jumping with joy, but ended up breaking one of the bones on the ground. Only then did he pay attention to the place he was in. There were several towers built with skulls. It was definitely not a place to be making noise. The legendary dwarven catacomb, so dark he needed a glowstone to light the way. He had no idea which wall he had broken to arrive there. Opening the system, he confirmed it would take almost 7 hours to return home. There's no doubt he could get back. He's tempted to do it, but he's a bit uneasy about the possibility of not waking up again. Not to mention he also wonders how he'll explain how he obtained this gem. He can't even say how or where he got this item, so it's better to go back while conscious. At least it's just a large cemetery. If it were a dungeon, he'd already be surrounded by skeletons and ghosts. The automatic mode is very good now, but it places him in strange and dangerous places until he saw something with his glowstone. He finally found the person who was spying on him. Both ended up quite startled. The two scream uncontrollably at the sudden encounter. He says he saw a ghost and she gets irritated at being mistaken for a monster. However, there's a creepy light behind her. A skeletal knight revealed itself in the middle of the catacomb. Its sudden appearance left them both very frightened. As it roars in fury, the young ones scream in fear. The sound echoes through the emptiness of the catacomb. Not wanting to stick around to find out what the creature will do, the boy runs. They both head in the same direction with the skeleton right behind them. Desperate, he asks her what's up with that creepy creature. She confirms that this monster is a skeletal knight of medium rank. An undead monster that uses its equipment to tear unsuspecting people into pieces. It's considerably strong and even she has difficulty with one of these. He thanks her for the explanation and quickly asks who she is. But but she didn't want to introduce herself to him. That's when the boy notices the girl's pointed ears. Besides that, she has bronze skin like a dark elf and seems to be about his sister's age, and with a flat chest like Liz. It seems she noticed this thought and punched him, annoyed. Her name is Tiara, and she asked him not to call someone by the race they belong to, as it's rude. She also doesn't want him to look at her with those disgusting eyes, but he swears he didn't do anything. The skeletal knight is still chasing them. Turning down a corridor, they almost lose him, but it keeps pursuing them, and they have no idea where it could have come from. They try to blame each other for what's happening. While arguing, they end up facing a dead-end path. As soon as he realizes the way is blocked, the skeleton is already too close, prepared to slice him with its sword. At the last moment, he was pushed and he held his head, disoriented from rolling on the ground. It was the girl who had protected him, holding off the creature's attack. An attack stronger than she expected. Perhaps it isn't a medium-rank monster. She does her best to hold on and orders the boy to run. He wasn't to worry about her. He needed to escape. She would keep it busy in the meantime. Wasting no more time, he obeyed her. He's disappointed as he's only a D-rank adventurer, and there's not much he can do to help her. While running, he ends up remembering his sister. That was enough to change his mind, and the elf girl was already at her limit. Gripping his pickaxe, he gets close to the skeleton's head. He struck its helmet hard enough to dent it, making a few teeth fall out. This created a window of opportunity for the elf girl. Enraged, the creature turns its head toward the boy. Spinning its body forcefully, it hits both of them with its shield. The skeleton roars furiously as they lie on the ground. Coughing, she says the boy is foolish for not running away, but he can't let a girl fight in his place, especially one who looks like his sister. If he's going to return home, it will be with his pride intact. He's never tried this before and has no idea what might happen. That new skill he acquired seems quite dangerous. The 4th level of his unique skill, Automatic Battle, has been activated. The first manifestation of automatic mode allows him to return home from wherever he is without fail. At level 2, he can automatically travel to familiar places, and at level 3, gather resources. At level 4, something interesting appears, Automatic Battle, once and without fail. The system warns him that this will take approximately 13 minutes. This left him thrilled, as he's only a E-class adventurer. Meanwhile, the girl reinforces her advice that he should leave as soon as possible. Confident, he says it's time for the skeleton to turn into dog food. He finally activated the skill he had never used since he acquired it, Automatic Battle. As soon as he activates the skill, he closes his eyes as if he's sleeping, but his body assumes a different stance on the ground. The skeleton remains oblivious to him for now. The girl watches him, and it seems he's really asleep. It's hard to understand this at first glance. She tries to wake him up as the skeleton is now about to slice off his head. However, as if aware of the situation, his body dodges the attack. The skeleton's strike hits only empty space. It repeats the strike, but with the same result. Now the skeleton prepares to unleash faster strikes, but none can hit the boy. The successive dodges are deeply frustrating the skeleton. Seeing this, the girl tells him not to anger the creature further, as it keeps trying to cut him down. The skeleton knight stops striking because it has stirred up too much dust, and the elf assumes there must now be a shapeless mass of flesh on the ground. Unexpectedly, he emerges from the dust completely unharmed. With quick movements, he managed to retrieve his pickaxe. She can't believe he's alive and wonders if he provoked the creature on purpose. She just has no idea what he plans to do with a pickaxe and a shovel, but he uses them skillfully to move. Gaining momentum, he launched himself toward the creature. He was very close to the skeleton knight, and a collision between them was inevitable. The elf had observed everything closely and could hardly believe it. The skeleton's helmet falls to the ground. It was the D-rank adventurer who delivered a forceful blow, managing to make a small dent in the large skeleton. She doesn't know what this boy might be. Meanwhile, the skeleton is deeply enraged by what's happening. Launching itself at the adventurer, it executes several rapid strikes that are difficult to follow. Even so, he dodges them all with ease. No matter what the creature does, it can't land a hit on him. In the midst of the strikes, the boy prepares to counterattack. Using his pickaxe, he manages to hit one of the skeleton's arms, disarming him its sword. The more the elf watches the combat, the less she understands. Dodging the blow executed with the shield, he leaps through the air and lands on the handle of his shovel, which is embedded in the ground. The anxious girl watches everything with focused attention and fear. With less than 8 minutes remaining, she can't stop wondering what on earth this guy in front of her is. At the Adventurers Guild building, the receptionist is very surprised. Her feet nearly shattered the floor when she saw that gem in front of her. A spirit gem, an extremely rare item. She even asks if it's really what she thinks, so he asks her to speak more quietly, so as not to draw too much attention. He had to cover her mouth to calm her down a bit more. Some wonder if it's a glowstone, as it's very large. He continues covering her mouth to steer the conversation away, and the receptionist asks Klaus if he understands what this means. Smiling uncomfortably, he says he may have overdone it again. Irritated, she wants to know if she needs to spell it out for him once more, while he thinks he knows what she's going to say. All he wants is not to be called into the office again, as it's a bit intimidating. Before he could do anything, a door opened at the back with the woman who scares him. She made a discreet gesture with her fingers, asking him to come to her. Since he didn't come, she had to call him loudly, which startled him greatly. The receptionist said she would take him to her office. Once again, he's inside, sitting on the couch with the spirit gem on the coffee table. All the old lady wants to know is how he got that item. He said he just stumbled upon one, but the old lady wants to know the exact location. He said it was in the Twilight Mine, but they don't seem very convinced by his explanation. The old lady examines the item carefully and asked if young Claus has any idea how much a spirit gem of that size is worth. He knows they are used in mage scepters and guessed its value at 1 gold coin. A small gem, smaller than a finger, is worth 1 gold coin. He must have heard of the legend of a group of heroes who defeated an evil dragon. Indeed, he knows it as it's based on a real story, and the mage's scepter had a spirit gem the size of a fist. Finally, he looks at the gem, then at his clenched fist. It was the size of his fist. He looks at the old lady, who sighs deeply. A brief silence fills her office, until she declares that it's a national treasure. Those words left Claus completely bewildered. After hearing that, he sat frozen on the couch. The retail value of that item is at least 600 gold coins. But after processing, analyzing its purity, and embedding it into his staff, it could be worth thousands of coins, even up to 10,000. Staying him in shock, that was the reaction she wanted to see. But if the guild buys it, they can only pay 100 gold coins. She made it clear they aren't cheating him. That's the price for a raw gem. 100 gold coins is a very tempting sum. With that amount of money, he wouldn't even need to work anymore. She even offered to pay him in magic stones. Given the two options, she wants to know what he will choose. Hesitantly, he pointed to the magic stones, and the old lady congratulated him as the young man aspires to become an elite adventurer. She said he could take the stones and hopes he contributes even more to the guild. But she has one last thing to ask. If he absorbs too much essence from those stones, he might explode, so he should be cautious. She wished they would be useful to him, but now Claus is terrified. She watches him through the window. As if a mandrake wasn't enough, he got a spirit gem. This item wasn't supposed to appear in the beginner's field, not to mention a medium-level skeleton appeared. Even with a trusted person nearby, the situation is hard to believe. He said a medium-rank elf was there and helped him defeat the monster, and they wonder where she is now. With 9 seconds left, the skeleton was already in pieces, with a sword embedded in its skull. As the time ended, he finally woke up. He immediately began to feel intense pain. Muscles, bones, and joints. Everything hurt. The elf says weak potions won't help at all and wants to know if that's all he has. Then she gave him something. Otherwise, he'd die before even reaching his house. A potion like that costs 1 gold coin per bottle, and the elf says every adventurer should have one ready. And he says he's just a low-level adventurer with no money. So he asks if she's really a medium level, to which the elf, besides confirming, says she's a veteran. Now he wants to know what she's doing in a beginner's area, but the elf won't say. She was only there to spy on him. To avoid answering more questions, she said she needed to leave. Back at the guild, the old lady asks if she has anything more to say. She had high expectations for her. Given what happened, the girl apologized. She said Claus behaved strangely in the mine and a skeleton ended up appearing. Even so, she shouldn't have revealed herself to him. At least by doing so, she managed to save his life. Her correction covered her mistake, but the old lady makes it clear there won't be a next time. Wanting to know if she has anything else to say, the elf says she misunderstood everything. She wasn't the one who defeated the skeleton knight. The old woman wants to know if it was really Claus who contributed the most to the monster's defeat. The elf corrects her, saying she didn't even help, she contributed nothing. The entire battle was planned and executed by Claus alone. The furious skeleton was now using its shield as a weapon, but Claus dodged every attack until he grabbed his shovel with one foot, striking the creature's remaining arm, leaving it without arms. Soon its skull began to be hit. The blows didn't stop at all. He continued like this until the monster was obliterated. Claus went on the offensive and single-handedly defeated the skeleton knight. It took her a while to realize what was happening. The old woman listens to this with an incredulous look. She had higher expectations of the elf, but the elf says that's exactly what happened. Swearing that it's true, a low-rank adventurer managed to take down a mid-level monster. The receptionist says there may be an incorrect detail there. According to the items Claus brought back, that was a skeleton general, a high-rank monster, which is why Tierra struggled to face it. Now the stories seem even harder to believe. They want to know what the hell he is, while Claus is out buying good cuts of meat to eat with his sister. They urge Tierra to tell the truth, but she insists she's told them everything. That is the inventory log. There on Claus' page, the D-rank adventurer. In the Misty Forest, he collected the following items: 23 goblin leader ears, 5 from goblin chiefs, 224 from regular goblins, and 1 from a hobgoblin. 22 fangs from kobold soldiers, 7 from kobold bis, and 389 from common kobolds. 21 slime cores and 1 smaller tree sprout. 100 poor man's daggers and 5 axes of the same quality, 10 shields, 1 club, 10 short spears, 20 shields, and 20 swords. He also acquired a small aromatic wood, as well as a large variety of magical stones. The other adventurers are a bit angered by this. That's a substantial amount of items. As a reward, he received 26 gold coins, 130 silver, and 70 copper. He is very pleased to receive all of that. Meanwhile, the receptionists are annoyed having so much work. His life has changed a lot since his skill was upgraded, and given the quantity of items, they want to give him some advice. He always brings back many items on his own, which might be difficult for him. But Klaus assures them it's easier than they think. In fact, it's even too easy. This leaves them completely saddened. This guy definitely didn't catch what they wanted to say between the lines. He's brought back so many items that they even want him to stop adventuring. Evaluating and checking each item is very tedious. They don't want him to keep doing this. With his reward, he happily leaves the guild. It had been very easy and rewarding. The automatic battle is now his ace, but he wonders what would happen if there were more than one type of monster or if they were numerous. He needs to test its effectiveness. He went to the Misty Forest as only weak monsters appear there. Already at level 38, it's the perfect place to clear up his doubts about his skill. He knows the place like the back of his hand, and strong monsters like the skeleton won't appear. Activating his skill, as soon as it's complete, he reaches a verdict. He did a full sweep of that place. On that day, any sign of monsters in the forest was completely erased. Not to mention, he did all of this without getting hurt. After using the skill many times, he encountered no issues. So far, he's only defeated weak monsters, and he's unsure if he'd be able to take down a higher level one. For now, the weaknesses he knows are the cooldown, as well as unknown enemies. Cooldown is the time between one activation and another. If not for the cooldown, he could use his skill all the time. For now, he needs to wait a minute before he can use it again, in any mode. For example, if automatic gathering ends and he's in danger, he can't use automatic battle as it's in cooldown. Unknown enemies are also a big problem. Before using the skill, he needed to hit them at least once. But weaknesses aside, it's definitely an exceptional asset. It's already nighttime and Klaus has finally arrived home. He was so absorbed in his skill that it's very late, and he wonders if Liz has already had dinner. He opens the door, apologizing, but is hit by a flying spoon. It hits him squarely on the head, and Liz manages to catch it with skill, almost like a boomerang. A bit displeased, she says he's late. She's only upset because he said he'd be home early that day, but didn't follow through. As punishment, he'll have to eat cold soup for dinner, but Klaus wants to at least explain why he was late. He was engrossed in something, and before he knew it, it was already very late. Liz knows he's happy with his skill, but if he ignores the dangers again and comes home injured, she won't care, like when he fought the skeleton. The potion didn't heal everything, and he ended up covered in bruises, which when Liz discovered led to a scolding. Since then, she's been increasingly worried about him. He apologizes and assures her he didn't do anything dangerous, asking if she needs anything, but Liz realizes he's trying to bribe her. But since he brought it up, she says he could buy mithril kitchen utensils, which cost 12 gold coins. They're the ones they saw in town, and feeling regretful, he says he'll buy them for her. At the time, she thought it was ridiculous for something so expensive and asked if someone was planning to cook a dragon in the pot, but still, she ended up asking him to buy it. Darkly, she says that what she wants to cook in that pot is Klaus himself. If he comes home injured again, he'll end up as stew. He tells her to stop joking, but Liz insists that's what will happen if he overdoes it again. More gently, she asks him to promise to be careful and to never forget it. Klaus raises his hands in agreement. They'll return safely to his sweet, gentle, adorable, and beloved sister, who blushes when he says beloved. Despite everything, she's right. He has to be careful, and he says he'll take a bath before dinner. He still aims for the top, but that doesn't mean he needs to make his sister suffer along the way. He finally asks if he could have hot soup for dinner, and Liz says she'll do it, but tells him to go take his bath quickly. While eating, he tells her how much he earned in gold coins, and Liz is surprised to realize they can buy the mithril kitchen utensils. Finally, they go to sleep after a long day. Dawn comes soon after, and a horse is neighing. Klaus now has a small cart to carry things. Bringing him food, Liz wonders what it is. Klaus says it's a cargo cart that he got at the guild earlier. She wants to know if he'll use it to sell things on the street, but Klaus says he'll use it to venture even further. He wants to reach the top, and for that, he needs allies so that the impossible becomes possible. Not to mention that now it'll be easier to carry all the items he finds on his adventures. But since he's not well regarded by adventurers, he can't recruit people so easily, and Liz feels emotional remembering that. So if he rented that cart, and already has a good portion of his problems solved. As his goal for the day, there are 3 places he'd like to visit. He's going to complete all open missions in the 3 beginner fields that aren't popular. He disappears into the horizon while Liz thinks this is an impossible task. At the Adventurers Guild, the receptionists are utterly hopeless. They already know that Klaus took several missions that day. Yesterday, he did that with the Foggy Forest, and now he did the same with the Poisonous Swamp, Twilight Mine, and the Gorge of Woes. That number of missions requires multiple people in several days. There's no way he'll come back with so many items. They try to believe this, that he won't return on the same day, nor with so many items. Tyrion smiles confidently, saying they're worrying too soon since he certainly won't do it all in a single day. And she refuses to stress out before the miracle of Klaus happens, even if he's done many unbelievable things before. And if that happens, the guild will take appropriate measures, even if it brings terrible consequences for the lone explorer Klaus. A hooded person is looking at the mission board. She stands there thoughtfully, listening to everything. She overheard the receptionists talking about Klaus. Inside the guild, there's a bar and restaurant, and there's some people are talking about Claus that he annoyed Tareen once again. This annoys them, as they are all smitten by the receptionist's beauty. The lone Claus, that's who they're talking about. The hooded girl tries to eat her meal, until she stomps her foot and approaches the other adventurers. She says they're discussing something very interesting. One of them becomes slightly hostile, so she asks the waiter to refill their drinks. Interested in the conversation, she even grabs her chair to sit with them. She's Merim, a low-rank adventurer, and she asks them to tell her more about the topic, about this Claus they keep mentioning. The bald man jokes about her being interested in a weirdo like him. Meanwhile, Claus is standing in front of a board showing travel routes for wagons. At first, he used the transit carriage a lot as it's very useful for getting adventurers to distant places. But the Claus of today is different from the Claus of yesterday. Looking at the donkey, he says he'll rely on its speed and load capacity because they'll be working hard today. The animal brayed once more. However, he soon realized there was someone behind a tree. It's the elf, still spying on what Claus has been up to. She complains that he left very early and is still using a donkey, even wanting to be faster. If he wanted to be faster, he should have taken a horse, not a donkey. Making this why he's low rank, as he doesn't know how to invest his money in good equipment. But soon she notices their excitement. Claus had activated automatic travel. The wagon sped down the road and was soon beyond the elf's line of sight. She can only watch, completely incredulous. Then she starts running, asking them to wait for her. That's not a normal speed for a donkey. It's bizarre. His destination is the poisonous swamp, and soon the countdown reaches 0. As he wakes up, his eyes slowly open. And the first thing he sees is the sign indicating the swamp. He stands on his wagon, observing the surroundings. To him, it was like arriving in the blink of an eye. The normal time of the horse-drawn carriage is 2.5 hours. But looking at the shadow's angle, he guesses it took less than an hour and a half, which makes him very happy. He can hardly believe he can use automatic travel on a vehicle. Not to mention that it's even faster, and even on foot in automatic mode, he's already pretty fast. For example, from the forest to his house takes an hour, but in automatic mode, 35 minutes. This reminds him of when he raced a knight to see who would be faster, a trained soldier or automatic mode. He won the challenge with ease. He even had a 15-minute lead, and the knight, though exhausted, insisted on a rematch. Frustrated, the knight said that skill isn't personal effort. If he had run for real, the knight says he wouldn't have lost. The race was even annulled due to the knight's health condition. Still, back then, he was level 1 and the knight was around level 50. He's not as useless as he once thought, and being able to use his skill on a vehicle opens up many possibilities. Not to mention he doesn't know exactly how, but the donkey was faster than a horse. Now he won't doubt himself. Everything depends on him and how well he can use his skill. However, not knowing the finer details of how his skill works is what scares him the most. The horse is neighing in frustration, and he looks at the animal and notices something. There was a blindfold over its eyes, which is why it was so distressed. The elf is on his trail and wonders what those things are. She's sure those tracks belong to them, but she realizes they must have taken a shortcut. But in the path of the wheels, there's a large rock. Going over that log was way too risky, and that's probably what he did with the wagon. Inside the guild, Merim still wants to know more about Claus. Right now, she wants to know if he's the kind of weirdo who's dangerous. The bald man says he'll try to tell her, as there's a story from several years ago. He once bet on a race with an experienced knight when he was still level 1. Claus won the race with a 15-minute lead. At that point, he wasn't seen as abnormal. But it was the shortcut he took. The final part of the race had to be done over a bridge. Instead of going to the end of the bridge, he jumped over it as if it were nothing, and it was high enough to kill someone. That's not even the worst part. He was working under the bridge that day. There was a pile of trash there where he could land safely, but it was blocked by a wall. He simply maneuvered his body in the air, avoiding any obstacles until he reached a wooden plank that cushioned his fall. He passed through a window with barely enough space for a person to squeeze through. He risked his own life for a small chance at victory. He'd never seen anything like it before. Finishing his story, he advised her to stay away from this guy, and grateful for the information, she gave him 2 silver coins. Unfortunately, she needs someone like him. This guy will definitely be hers. Before she could leave, the bald man reminded her that she had asked the bartender to refill their drinks. While she regretfully thinks about what she did, Claus is in the poisonous swamp. The elf looks at him in surprise, seeing that there are several mission papers in his cart, and in front of her is Claus with several items. All of these are items that needed to be collected to complete the missions. He had now completed all the missions in that area. Even with all this load, there was still room in the cart for more. None of this makes any sense. That donkey is way faster than she is. The elf assumes she must have arrived only half an hour late, and that was enough time for him to complete all those missions. That's terrible for her. If this keeps up, all she'll be able to tell her sister is that she doesn't know what happened. Claus is now heading to the Twilight Mine, and the elf prepares to take a high potion. She ended up drinking 2 bottles to keep up with Claus on his adventures. She is determined to get some information. She won't let a medium-rank adventurer be left behind by him. And so, they continue their journey. 6 hours have passed, and now they're at the Gorge of Woes. The elf is high on a rock observing Claus' carriage. This time he had been quite slow. She's already tired of waiting for him. She was clever enough to find a shortcut and arrive there well before him. Knowing she couldn't keep up with his pace, she came up with this brilliant strategy. She can try to boast about it, but the truth is she's embarrassed by how hard it is for her. Properly hidden, she believes she's about to discover the secret behind Claus's speed. She wants to see if he's innocent or just cheating. While she's observing him, she wonders why he stopped since he hasn't even entered the gorge yet. Checking his system, Claus notices he's 30 seconds away from the item he's looking for. He activates his skill and begins to sleep, vanishing in the blink of an eye and reappearing behind the elf. As soon as she looks back, surprised, Claus already has his pickaxe in hand. He then begins breaking the rock. The elf does her best to remain hidden. That low-ranking adventurer appeared suddenly right behind her. She's now doubting if he's really as low-ranked as he seems. While she's lost in thought, he's collecting the mandrake. Immediately, the root begins to scream, and this sound can be fatal to those who hear it. There's no way he's really that low-ranked. By nightfall, he returns home while the elf is lying on the ground, nearly lifeless. It's nighttime, and someone is speaking with the guild master. Looking at Claus' record, they realize it's the adventurer rank promotion season, and the receptionist wants to know what they're going to do in his case. He can't remain at this level. The problem is he keeps doing everything alone, but his achievements are those of an advanced explorer. If nothing goes wrong, just with the guild's recommendation, he'll automatically be accepted into the exam. She is looking at a recommendation letter from an A-rank team. That letter is from his former team and elsewhere. A maid says that Charlotte will take the exam next week. The man praises her work and releases her to leave. He is the team leader and the one who wrote the recommendation letter. It's been a while since he's heard news from that city. It wouldn't be a surprise if Claus were still at rock bottom. The flaw that stained his team, the name of that fool is Gain Cash. He believes that Claus must still be useless. All on that same day, Claus collected 65 gold coins and a mandrake. Meanwhile, the girl looking for him ended up losing all her coins. Liz is deeply focused, cooking in her house. It was the best recipe she'd ever made in her life. The flavor was perfect. The pepper she used was the secret to this, and she imagines her brother will love it. She made a doll of him and imagines he's telling her that if she keeps it up, she'll make a great wife. She continues her daydream, imagining he will end up marrying her. She goes on with her bizarre and obsessive make-believe. Her father died in the war, so Claus's father, a close friend of her late father, adopted her. She's just the little sister who loves her brother. Now there will be a stronger focus on her. Meanwhile, the real Claus is having a meal in the Twilight Mine. Back at his house, something else is going on. Liz is sitting at the table with the Claus doll. She opens her eyes, looking serious. The Supreme Council of Noldor is assembled. There are state secretaries present, one for the Treasury and the Interior Minister. Claus is only an observer, and Liz is the Supreme Chancellor, who will present the topic of this solemn session. It's about what they'll have for dinner. They now look at each other attentively. Her brother will be on missions in 3 different places, and knowing this, she can't cook something ordinary. One of them suggests that due to the increase in funds, they should make very expensive steaks. But the Interior Minister suggests they should make fish, while the Claus doll says that anything is good if made with love by Liz. She smiles happily at this because it's true that the real Claus would say something like that to her. Making it with love is a given, but she still needs to decide what to make. But one of them asks the Chancellor to have patience. That one is General Ladle. The higher her brother flies, the harder he could fall. And he asked if she had forgotten what happened to him 3 years ago. That day it was raining heavily, and she arrived home wearing a raincoat. Claus was leaning over the table. She asked if he wasn't supposed to stay at the clan house he belonged to for a few more days. Claus told her he left, but she knew he had been very happy to get in. A month before that, he had been quite happy with his life. He thanks her for the meal and says that Liz's cooking is the best. She wants to know if Claus was really in a castle because she thought he'd be in a training field. But the castle is kind of both. Yet for the wealth of the Cash family, it was one of the smallest. Even so, one of the rooms was 100 times bigger than their house, which left Liz amazed. She wants to know if he attended any banquet at that castle. Claus has the look of someone with a story to tell. He talked about the harsh training sessions, of all the classes he had there, and he spared no details for his sister. There was so much training and so many classes that just remembering made him anxious, and Liz asked him to stop recalling those things. And in a martial arts duel, he was obliterated in record time. Even so, Gain extended his hand to him. He asked him how long he would stay on the ground. He looked up at Gain's outstretched hand, who said they were special because they both had unique abilities. Claus believes his automatic mode doesn't come close to the skills of others, but Gain assures him that what he needs is to level up. He just had to say how many magic stones he needed, and they would get them for him to soar like a dragon. In this way, they would conquer the world. These words captivated him because Gain believed in his power. But after that day, he changed his behavior. It took only 20 days after the invitation for him to join them. She was at home cooking when he arrived from training. His cheek was pretty bruised. She asked what happened, and Claus said he tripped and fell face first to the ground. Liz began inspecting him closely. She was convinced he was lying because nothing escapes her eyes. That was a punch, and it was even delivered with the back of the hand. Claus wants to know how she can tell in such detail. The mark is identical to the one their neighbor has every time he cheats on his wife and similar to the move she's been secretly practicing. He said he had a disagreement with Game because they have different opinions. Inside the castle, they're gathered in the sitting room. They're talking about the exam for promotion to medium rank, which involves collecting items in the beginner's area within a time limit. But they're special and special people deserve a special exam. Glenn agrees with him completely on this matter because he despises the poor and useless people. Child agrees, saying that since this is their first and only time taking the exam, they should make it grandiose. Compared to those who can't do anything, they are geniuses and well above the rest. Mika would love to be treated as someone special and wanted to jump straight to the advanced exam as she has disdain for inferior people. She asked if Claus had made her lemonade yet, as he's taking too long. With everyone agreeing with him, he wants to make a flashy gebut. To do this, they'll place high-ranked beasts in the testing field and then appear to save everyone. This proposal took them all by surprise. He had already instructed Abel and Lane to capture some stone lizards now and then. These are rare creatures, and there are rumors that one was seen near the beginner's field. Claus asks if this is a joke, as the plan, aside from being risky, could endanger innocent lives. But Game doesn't care at all about that. He then called Claus over and, closing his hand, used his skill, striking him with the back of his hand, which threw Claus far back. His skill can stop time or a target for a short period. He said of course they're joking, and asked if something was wrong with Claus, as it looked like he punched himself. Maybe he's ill, and he asked Lane to escort him home. Claus was left confused as he watched Gain and the others leave. He's outside the castle. This happened 10 days before he left the team. Claus even stopped smiling. That event marked the split in their paths. Claus said he was lucky to have this skill, but it's not luck that decides how he'll use it. He intends to use what he has to its maximum potential. He looked at the sky through the window as Liz's heart raced. She remembered all this with a heavy heart. Still, her brother has been striving, even alone, to achieve his goals. She will be his support, and when he achieves his dreams, she'll be there to support him. Her eyes shine with determination. Then she asks her subconscious vassals what they should make for dinner. They fill with determination. A depraved sick suggestion, typical of the average person's darker thoughts, suggests that she, a minor, offer herself to her brother. Her subconscious is indeed a degenerate and senseless place. She scolded her vassals for this. They say it might happen someday, and the figure of Claus reminds her that the promotion exam is approaching. Maybe she should think about that when he passes the exam. This is Liz, a girl in puberty, full of wild thoughts. Elsewhere, in a grand castle, a jester speaks to Gain, asking if he heard the new information about Claus. Besides taking the exam, he received a guild recommendation to take it alone, which to Gain is outrageous. They remember when they took the exam, assuming Claus leaked the information about what they planned to do, not to mention that the new recruit will take the exam too. This excites him, as they'll give Claus a very flashy exam. With a menacing aura and a smile on her face, the receptionist says Claus did it once again. He's frightened, the other receptionists are discouraged, and his cart is full of items. He completed a mission load that would normally require at least 15 people. All that sorting will be a lot of work, and she should treat him accordingly. Pulling him by the arm, she says she'll take him to room number 3, but he doesn't know what he did wrong. Inside the room, he sees a recommendation letter. It states that he's eligible to take the promotion exam. She congratulates him, as the guild recognizes his skills and strength. Based on his accomplishments, they believe he's no longer of a lower rank, and she hopes he has a safe exam. Stunned, Claus asks what's going on, and she repeats that it's a recommendation letter made by the guild for him. In recognition of his skills, he's been invited to take the promotion exam. As he realizes what's happening, he starts jumping and shouting with joy. She asks him to be quieter. This is the result of his effort, and she's been in charge of him for 3 years now. She praises him, saying he never gave up, no matter what people said about him. And she experienced it firsthand, as he never listened to her, no matter how worried she was. Always putting himself in danger, he fought a high-rank monster, ventured alone into poisonous places, among other things. He thought he'd be congratulated, but he's already getting a scolding. But she says that's obvious and he shouldn't complain. They're locked in the room, and she wants to discuss his common sense, as he always ignores his surroundings when doing something. There's a limit to the materials the guild can process, and every day he shows up with several. She decides to talk about the risks they face because of him. It seems like he's seeking death by taking on dangerous tasks, and his sister should be told he'll be late today, as the guild master asked for help to process the items. But with luck, they should finish everything before dawn, and the scolding continued until the next day. A few days passed, and the day of the exam arrived. He'd been waiting for this day for 3 years, and now he can finally move toward his goals. The guild door opens forcefully. Claus enters with great enthusiasm. The hall is filled with adventurers. He begins observing the people and walking back and forth. He notices that everyone is accompanied. As always, he's alone, hiding in a corner to avoid looks, just the way he likes it. The receptionists enter the hall. They welcome everyone and begin calling each person by their respective numbers, handing them their admission papers. Next to him, someone asks if he's Claus, the lone one. Surprised, he hears her say it's easy to tell who he is. The reason is simple, as she's also a loner, and Miriam introduces herself to him. Since they're both always alone, she suggests they form a duo. He briefly looks at her but completely ignores her. She starts arguing with him, and the receptionist asks them to be quiet. She says there's still someone they're trying to take the exam alone, and that's Claus. These words pierce the boy's heart. Miriam insists again that they team up, and he wants to know why he would partner up with her. Then Miriam says it's a long story. She says she might be doing this out of simple guilt and nothing more. This leaves him deeply upset. The story was way too short, and she continues, saying that as soon as she learned Claus was a loner, they should team up. He ignores her again. After everything he's done, he doesn't have time to entertain this person. It's been 3 years since he left his team, and he can't miss this opportunity. The receptionist calls participant 32, Charlotte, from the Special Forces team, Claus's former team. As soon as he hears that name, he freezes. With his heart racing, he can't believe Tareen said that name. It's a famous team, and the participants begin talking about it, saying that in 3 years it became an A-ranked team. Miriam says she's heard of them, that they only have members with unique abilities. Tareen calls Charlotte once again, saying she'll be disqualified if she doesn't present herself. But someone says she's there, and there's no need to panic. Gain opens the guild door and starts walking into the hall. It's been 3 years since they last saw each other. Gain walks past Claus. Looking at him, he taunts his former teammate, saying he's still hanging around. Claus looks at him with eyes full of hatred. Seeing him up close, he has to restrain his anger. He remembers how Gain conspired to make Claus lead the team of his own accord. 3 years ago, he was behind the door orchestrating everything. Gain repeats what they said to him about having a useless person around. That's what all of his teammates think as well. Even though he has a unique skill, returning home isn't useful at all. He's just useless, and if Gain doesn't expel him, the girl asks permission to do it. But Gain says that's not something he can do. There would be consequences, and there's something more important as well. Some might say it shows a lack of skill to recruit good team members. They're thinking he might want to keep him on the team, but Gain also agrees with them. But there are many fools in the world who would draw the wrong conclusion from that. That's why they can't expel him. He has to choose to leave voluntarily. This has to happen soon, or else a fatal accidental incident will take care of it. Now Claus understands he's not welcome there. Just as he had heard, he soon began being harassed by them and even got involved in a dangerous accident, but has no proof it was staged. He sold his equipment to pay for training and consumable items and left of his own accord. If he could, he would have punched him back then. He just doesn't know what Gain is doing in town if his base is in the capital. Claus says he was born here, so of course he'd be in the city, and he has no idea what business Gain has here. But he has nothing to discuss with him and asks not to be bothered. Gain says he only came because of the new member and would like to celebrate that miraculous reunion. It's a miracle that in 2 years a useless person could take the exam. And after 3 long years he's taking the exam. That's a miracle. Gain is amazed at how miraculously incompetent he is. Claus calls him an idiot, but Miriam steps between them. This surprised Claus seeing her behavior. She says she doesn't care what Gain is saying and that Claus is her teammate, and she won't let him be insulted, and if he has a problem with that, the sorceress Miriam will deal with him. This made Claus a bit happier to be defended. On the other hand, Gain's expression darkened. He says that rural area is full of bugs, and the posture of his hands startled Claus. Before anything could happen, he grabbed the sorceress and left the place. He said Gain is dangerous and doesn't hesitate to hit even children and women, to which Miriam finally asserts that she's not a girl. For doing this, she expects at least a thank you. Miriam says they're teammates now, and Claus scratches his head, embarrassed. He says they're not, but then his number is called, and she wants to register Claus on her team, which the receptionist accepts. He tries to say something, but Tareen tells him to stay quiet. For the task, they must choose one of the 3 items and collect it within the time limit. A peculiar girl who looks almost like a furry is there. Gain tells her she shouldn't have come alone, and she asks if that's the guy he mentioned. That claw is the one he said tarnishes his special forces. Indeed, it is, but today is special because he's going to clear that stain from his past. They've used him as a stepping stone for her to launch herself as a star, but she says he has a peculiar smell. Maybe it's the smell of a strong person. Maybe things won't go as Gain planned. As long as the planned result is achieved, it's fine. He's prepared for anything. The receptionist clears her throat and the doors open. The participants are all ready to begin the exam. The signal is finally given, and they leave the place quickly. They must collect 3 of the items on the list in the specified quantities. The time limit is until noon the next day, and items collected as a team are shared. Looking at her list, Miriam says they started well since they share 4 items. Optimistic, she says they have the exam in the bag. He's driving the cart, completely irritated. Miriam says they can't let their guard down and need to choose the most efficient way to collect the items. She wants to start with the unicorn horn, which seems to be the hardest to get, but she wants to know what Klaus thinks about it. Furious, he told the little brat to shut up. But Miriam doesn't mind, and trying to ease the situation, asked him to help with this. Since they're partners now, and Klaus makes it clear that it was Miriam who followed him. Opening up his abilities, he's ready to initiate automatic travel. Miriam doesn't understand what he's doing, but Klaus says he's already decided where he's going. Apologizing, he says that from here on, he'll go alone and presses the start button. Once again, his eyes slowly close and Merim asks if he's sleeping. Time has passed and his eyes slowly open again. He's now in the Unearthed Cemetery. It's been a long time since he's been there. He knows there are ghouls around the place. Looking back, he doesn't see Merim, so he thinks he either left or fell along the way. Clinging to the carriage, Merim says that's what he thinks and is furious with Claus. He repeatedly asked him to wait and use the normal road. Now the two of them are walking through the cemetery. That's the surface, and below are the ghouls. Some skeletons start emerging from their graves, but soon their heads are separated from their bodies. The two of them are skilled enough to deal with these monsters. This is a two-part dungeon. The surface has weak skeletons, while medium-rank monsters start appearing underground. They have no time to waste here as they need to collect ghoul jaws. That's what Merim says, and Claus looks at him in surprise. He didn't expect him to be anything other than useless. However, he's eligible to take the exam on his own, so he shouldn't underestimate him. Realizing that Merim took the exam after only a year as an adventurer, while Claus only managed to do so after 3, Merim knows Claus is surprised by his strength. Claus even asks if he can read minds, but Merim says it's much simpler than that, because everyone he's ever teamed up with has the same expression. He notices the envy in their eyes, but Claus thinks that's the look he gives when he sees a scammer. But Merim hadn't even started yet. He's a mage. Ahead of them is a horde of skeletons, which is perfect for him. He focuses power into his staff and asks Claus to observe the greatness of one who will become a great mage. Merim prepares to execute his special attack. He launches his attack with force, but the energy is going in the wrong direction. It's heading toward Claus, and he quickly realizes what's happening. The energy ball is getting closer and closer. Claus breaks out in a cold sweat with the imminent impact. He barely manages to dodge, wondering what just happened. The tree behind him was obliterated. A large part of its trunk section was destroyed. Unable to withstand the damage, it fell, destroying a house in front of it. The front of the house started to collapse entirely. The skeletons looked toward what's coming their way, promptly crushed like paper. The skeletons were duly obliterated. Claus is still stunned, and Merim tries to hide his face, knowing he almost made a huge mistake. With a bone in his hand, he calls out to him. He's waiting for an explanation of what happened. Merim says at least it was effective. Claus starts hitting him, and Merim says it wasn't on purpose, which only makes it worse. Now that it's happened, Merim tries to make it up to him. He says he's already apologized and they're partners, but Claus doesn't want him to follow him and insists they aren't partners. He says at least it saved them time, but that's not the point. He nearly hit Claus with that trick. The monsters underground are all vulnerable to fire, and he plans to incinerate them, and says he also has support magic abilities. Claus is worried about getting burned too, and now understands why Merim is also a loner. He tries to find the right words to say to him, but Merim quickly asks what's over there. He asks Claus to pay attention to him while he's speaking. There are some people blocking access to the catacombs. It seems they won't be able to get in. An adventurer says it's an emergency, which is why the place is closed off. A high-level monster appeared in the boss room. Soon, an A-rank adventurer appears and says the area is dangerous. The mist is disappearing. The dungeon is being purified. After the boss is defeated, the dungeon is cleansed. In this way, the monsters that would appear there stop spawning. Thus, they won't be able to collect the items they need. Claus is annoyed with this guy, who soon appears at the top of the staircase. Glenn appears, holding a skull in his hand. Claus knows him from when they belong to the same team. Merim asks if he knows him, and Claus replies that he does. The central member of the Special Forces with his atomic shifting ability soon recognizes Claus. It's been a while since they last saw each other, and he says Claus suits this decrepit place. Claus wants to know what an A-rank like him is doing in the countryside. He says he's there to help those taking the exam. Gain volunteered to be a supervisor this time, and because of that, he ended up encountering an Emperor skeleton, which could have been quite dangerous. Luckily, he was there as he prevented many deaths. They don't know when another anomaly might occur, destroying the hunting grounds by chance. He moves to another place, and Claus realizes that they are sabotaging the exam. Now they need to hurry. Claus finds it hard to believe they're doing this just to annoy him. Merim wants to know if they really intend to destroy the hunting grounds, but Claus doesn't even want to think about that. But bringing strong monsters to places like this is something they would do with a smile on their faces. They usually play dirty, and he doesn't know what to do now. But if this is the situation, he has a plan for it. To prevent them from sabotaging him, he will use the automatic mode at its full potential. They discarded him as trash, but now he will show them everything he's capable of. It's a mountainous dungeon in the deep mountains of Shinonam, and the current season is spring. In the midst of the flower-filled fields, a woman is doing something. Using magic, she made a blizzard take over the place. She calls him an idiot, as Gain had already thought of every detail. He's free to go there. Soon some monsters start to appear. She believes she will freeze his body and mind. Inside the guild building, the guest room has been rented by the Special Forces. In the hallway, 2 people are approaching and announce their arrival. They give what was ordered, either by clearing dungeons or sealing gathering areas. This made Gain pleased, as he was already expecting their success. It had been so easy they even got sleepy, but he wants to know how things are going. At first, everything's fine. Abel's squad is now taking care of the unicorn areas. That way, Claws and the other useless ones won't stand a chance of earning a rank promotion. He also hired mercenaries to clear low-level dungeons around the whole city. Only the hardest ones will remain, even if they're meant for beginners. He believes the weak shouldn't ascend, as they only lower the level of adventurers. The mission of strong people like him is to identify and eliminate the weak. Glenn also agrees that the exam is a big foolishness. He heard that he even used his time-stopping ability to check Claws' item list. He thought he had come there just to stop Claws, but the effeminate one says he's only a stone in his path. They are special and have a task meant only for them, to ensure that only the capable pass. They are creating a memorable exam that only the best will pass. Glenn finds it amusing and doesn't care if the guild leader dies of anger because of it. So far, the only ones remaining are their companion and poor Claws. According to their spies, he's heading north. He's going to the deep mountains of Shinano. It's a day's journey away, and he smiles, thinking of Claws' naivety and believing they hadn't already been there. There, his enemy will be the very climate. He'll be at the mercy of Carmen, who controls the weather. Arriving there, he still has to deal with raging monkeys that attack anything they see. The two are surrounded on all sides by creatures. Unexpectedly, the monkeys begin to leave. They're relieved by this, as these are low-rank monsters and get aggressive when they wake up, and that must have happened because of the blizzard. They're upset because there wasn't supposed to be snow at this time of year. To Merrim's surprise, Claws states that it's someone's doing. Just by looking at the horizon, the snow is only falling in a specific area. This ability belongs to Carmen, who controls the weather, but there's a limited range to it. 3 years ago, she was already doing incredible things. Now she can even create a blizzard. But he's improved too, and he activated his system. In just over 20 minutes, he'll collect 5 Crummel fruits, and in 2.5 hours, he'll collect 5 phantom nuts. They have no idea of the abilities he now has, and the automatic gathering will work regardless. The only problem is the weather, as he doesn't know if he'll withstand the region's cold. Feeling optimistic, he knows he needs to do it no matter what. Merrim wants to know what he's planning to do. He should be cautious because, in addition to the cold, are those monkeys. He advises Merrim to turn back, as things will get dangerous from this point onward. While they were fighting the monkeys earlier, he realized it's not bad to have someone to share the struggle with and rely on for support. But his skill is meant for him to do things alone. That's when he shines even brighter. Merrim couldn't keep up with him, so he asked him to go back. Then, Claws activated his automatic collection skill. Snow spread over the place and Merrim protected himself, but he quickly opened his eyes. Realizing Claws had disappeared, he was worried, hoping Claws wouldn't stay there. Time passed and Claws' eyes slowly opened. In his hands were the fruits. There were the 5 he needed, and there were still many more around. He planned to gather them for extra money. But soon he began to hear a sound and he focused on it. Far away, Merrim was running. Realizing he'd been followed, he called him an idiot and told him to go back. The next collection would take 2.5 hours, and he wouldn't be able to keep up, so he activated his skill once again. As the usual time passed, he opened his eyes. He couldn't see anything in front of him and wondered if he'd misjudged sunset time. He was startled by what was in his hands, but he quickly remembered they were the nuts he'd been looking for. Then he remembered he had stones that worked like lanterns. Now he could see better around him, only to realize there were several monsters nearby. The creatures charged at him, furious. Several claws nearly shredded him, but Merrim was already there, staff in hand. A strong glow began to emanate from it. However, they were separated by what looked like a ravine. He warned that there was a creature behind Claws, yet the real danger was coming from the front. He dodged the magic Merrim cast. The spell was heading toward the creature, which was hit squarely by it. Determined, he said he wouldn't let it hurt his friend. Concerned, Claws shouted Merrim's name. Then one of the creatures let out a furious roar, which made the wizard tremble with fear. He told Claws to flee while he distracted the creature. It had lifted an entire trunk with one hand, which was definitely bad news. To Claws' concern, the trunk was heading toward Merrim. This caused him to fall down the ravine. The fall was certainly painful, but there was enough snow to cushion the impact. However, he was still surrounded by dangerous creatures. One of them roared and the others began to move. Claws couldn't understand and found it hard to believe they were going after the wizard. Acting quickly, he struck one of the creatures and opened his system, annoyed at being ignored by the creatures. The first option his eyes landed on was automatic return, but he would only do that if he were alone. Those creatures were at least mid-rank, much stronger than them. But he wasn't alone in that situation, and he positioned himself between the monsters and the wizard. He was going to start an automatic battle, which would take a little over 10 minutes to defeat the 8 monsters. He wouldn't let them reach Merrim, asking him to hold on for 10 minutes and 28 seconds. It's not like they're friends, and he has no obligation to help him since adventurers are free to make their own choices, but Claws won't let him die. With his sword in hand, he would handle everything in 10 minutes. Meanwhile, the blanket biter watched him confused. The blizzard was intense, and he had to cover his eyes for a moment. In front of him was Claws, ready to fight, but he soon disappeared. For a moment, he was worried, not knowing where he'd gone, and the creatures began to grow restless, looking for him. The smaller Bigfoot specialized in stealthy assassination and was quite aggressive. The delicate one quickly noticed they started to disappear. That's when they became most dangerous. Their danger level rose from beginner to medium. Far away, there was a cabin. A young man used his enhanced hearing skill, and someone called out for Chao Sama. He heard the sound of the Yiddish war call, as well as them attacking claws. She loved hearing that and was glad they'd managed to deceive them, also asking for the fire to be stoked as it was cold. That was checkmate. Once the Yiddish set their sights on prey, they never give up. She just didn't know how that would contribute to Gain's goal of creating a nation one day. Her special treatment of claws made her feel disgusted and very jealous, as she seemed to be sadistic. In fact, she felt envious of Claws and was glad he wouldn't make it through the night. She intensely wished he'd never appear again. In the snow, the delicate one observed everything. Everyone disappeared and he only hears the sound of the Yiddish. Now he thinks Claws has become dinner for the creatures, until one of them suddenly starts bleeding from the neck in a way worthy of an A24 film, falling to the ground, lifeless and drained of blood. The other beasts are looking for the little boy. They're gathering as if they know they're in danger. The small silhouette of Claws appears behind one of them, and the unlucky one roars in pain after that. Claws had taken down another one of them. The red liquid gushes like a fountain. Another lifeless body now decorates the ground. The delicate one is terrified because Claws is stealthier than the sneaky Yiddish themselves. Not to mention that he's killing them with a single blow, even though the creatures are extremely muscular. Maybe he's attacking them when they're relaxed. Either way, the delicate one is horrified. One of them thought it found the executioner of his group, but it's just a leaf moving where the effeminate one is. Soon the pile of snow is destroyed, and the effeminate one had to get out of there if he wanted to live. It was just a little plant and nothing more. Both the creature and the effeminate one realize it was bait, a well-done distraction. Claws emerges from the snow like a monster. And yet another little creature went to the animal paradise. Seeing him up close, the delicate one noticed something different about Claws. Now he's sure that this guy will do something grand someday. That's what his intuition keeps telling him. Now there's only one creature left alive. It's smart enough to know it needs to get out of there as soon as possible, because if it stayed, it would end up in animal paradise too. But soon a sword is plunged deep into its chest. It was Claws hiding under the snow. Time was up. With that, he absorbs the monster's experience, making him level up a few times, and finally his eyes begin to open slowly. He can't see anything, but soon hears a voice approaching him. Claws opens his eyes once more. There's something soft in his hands. Looking down, he realizes it's a loaf of bread. After that, he heard someone calling him Big Brother. She says one shouldn't play with food. Not understanding anything, he looked out the window, realizing he's at home. He doesn't remember using the automatic return, but he was with the Yiddish, and Liz confirms that he killed all 8 of them. In 10 minutes and 28 seconds, he stabbed the last one amid the snow. Right after that, his body collapsed from the cold and exhaustion, falling into a deep sleep in the snow. Still clutching the bread, he asked if he was in paradise, but his sister said it was different. And, annoyed, she told him to stop squeezing the bread again. He thinks she'll go to paradise, until he starts waking up slowly. There's something in his hands. He was squeezing his sister while sleeping because the person who imagined this scene has questionable morals. But that's not his sister, as she's flat as a board. Something isn't right. He doesn't know where he is or what that is. The girl gets up after sleeping. She asked if Claws was already awake. But growing up without the internet, all he could look at was her chest, which made her very uncomfortable. She asked him not to look, but Claws said it was an accident. It's a girl, and she begged him not to look at all. Throwing a boot at his face, she asked him once again to stop looking. He thinks about what to say to his dear sister because after waking up from that bloody battle, the person following him turned out to be a girl with very noticeable attributes, much to his pleasant surprise. He noticed there were bandages on his hands, which explains why he felt so little while squeezing the bread. And now his hands are throbbing non-stop. Only then did he feel the pain, and the girl told him to stay still because his hands and feet were frostbitten, and he almost froze to death. It was just like Liz said in his dreams, and the girl mentioned that she dug a hole in the snow to keep them warm. She insisted he shouldn't get the wrong idea as she's so embarrassed she could die. Then he remembered it was she who first started protecting him. If not for that, he wouldn't be there breathing. She tells him not to worry because friends help each other. Claws thanks her for the help, but he says that whether they're friends is still under consideration. But she says he's stubborn, and in his defense, Claws doesn't know how to call her a friend if she's a girl. Now awake, he kicks a piece of snow outside. Both of them start to emerge from their refuge. He doesn't know why she wants to join him as he's just a nobody left behind. She responds that it was her skill that told her to do so. It's called intuition, and in crucial moments, it won't stop alerting her. When she follows it, things usually go well, like when she defeated the skeletons in a single attack or found him without seeing him in the dark. She knows he's not a nobody because she chose him. Now they have to keep going as there's little time left before the exam ends. He just told her not to regret it as the last plan is difficult, and they need to start it as soon as possible. Ghouls are slow, but they're strong and have resilient bodies. They're undead that eat people, and there are several types that can appear anywhere. They're going to hunt them. That's how he wants to complete the exam. In the carriage, she asks if this won't be a problem. They were the first ones to be purified, and there shouldn't be any nearby. But only the lower level ones were eradicated. His target is the mid-level and above. Hearing this, she says he's quite irresponsible, but he responds that other monsters are even harder. He knows this because he saw it with his skill, and they only have 8 hours left and wouldn't reach any of them in time. Miriam thought this skill was very useful, and given the possibilities, that was all they had left. She said his skill is almost like cheating. He should sell information to others, and he says her intuition is also very good. But the skill only works on monsters he's fought before, and he's never faced a mid-level ghoul and wants to know if she's still willing. She says yes and is looking forward to it. Hearing that, he says they'll head at full speed to the catacombs of the old church. He put a potion that increases speed by 40% in the donkey's food. He asked her not to fall off the carriage, and the girl says that would be too easy. Then his skill was activated. They would arrive in 3 hours and 24 minutes. When the time was up, they were already at the church. This made him very excited because it was almost over. He didn't know the size of that dungeon, but he knew it had never been purified before. It's possible that Gain hadn't done anything there, but it's not possible to purify the place without knowing who the boss is, until he realizes something. Miriam isn't anywhere to be seen. He immediately worries, thinking she may have fallen somewhere, but he soon notices she's under his cloak, hugging him. She said she hadn't panicked for a moment. Not even the river part was scary. She said it was quite smooth. Regaining their composure, the two entered the catacomb, which cost 2 copper coins. They rented a lantern to use inside. Miriam says that doesn't scare her. However, dark, moldy places like that. Before she finished speaking, Klaus scared her. Annoyed, she tried to hit him. After that, they continued walking down the corridors. Going down the stairs, he wants to know how much Miriam knows about the place, and she says she just got there. On the 6th floor, they encountered a strange door. Through a small window, he saw that everything was clear on the other side. So they opened the door completely. The story goes that this place was a dungeon before the city existed, and they built the church on top of it in the hope of purifying the place. However, it was deeper than they had imagined, and only the superficial floors were cleaned, with the lower ones concentrating evil and becoming more dangerous. Every now and then someone's hired to purify the place. But since it's the church that pays, there's almost no interest because they pay little. That's why there are seals on each of the doors to prevent dangerous creatures from escaping. Just imagining the dangerous things made Miriam shudder. She asked if Claus had felt that, and he said sometimes a creature escapes. If that happens with them, she should leave him behind and flee, but she didn't understand what he meant. She asked if he was joking, but he said he was quite serious about it. His skill allows him to return home without fail, but he can only do it alone. He was happy that she saved him and didn't want her to die there. That's why he was begging her. Smiling, she says she understands but thinks he's just trying to look cool. However, her skill can also sense imminent danger. She would get him out of there before danger arrived. Excited, he said he was counting on her. They're on the 10th floor. That's where the dungeon begins. Their targets are the ghouls, and they should stealthily attack the weaker ones. There's a huge staircase there. On the 15th floor, a bat is flying with a letter. A girl calmly sips tea. She is Mika Kisaragi, a member of the Special Forces, and she commands an army of puppets. There is a clear warning on the door. From that point onward, it's the dungeon, and the door must be kept closed after passing through it. Then the dew opens it to enter. They are immediately surprised by what they find inside. At first glance, the place is infested with ghosts. Klaus is thrilled, as it exceeds his expectations. Miriam, on the other hand, is completely terrified, claiming that the place is truly dangerous. Her intuition feels like an alarm in her head, but they are going to start the plan to lure the ghouls. With a bone in his hands, Klaus hides behind a pillar. He starts moving forward through the room. Meanwhile, Miriam is on the other side of the door outside the dungeon. She is recalling the steps of their plan. Klaus will be the bait, as in the worst-case scenario, he can use his skill to escape, to find a lone ghoul and lure it, leading it to where Miriam is. The goal is to get it out of the dungeon and into the safe area. Miriam will then emerge from the pile of bodies and attack it stealthily. She didn't like having to hide in such a place. She prefers hiding in the shadows since the bodies are disgusting, but Klaus insists it has to be that way. Either way, he needs her, as the automatic combat has its risks. The area in front of them is a death zone, so they need to take advantage of the safe area, and she's crucial for that. Miriam says that if she's essential to the strategy, he better not annoy her. After all, life is precious and safety comes first. Now they're ready to begin. Miriam is still a bit uneasy. She asks him to be cautious, as her intuition has never been this alarmed. It's as if she senses a Grim Reaper behind her, ready to take her life. The chills grow even stronger, and looking back, she spots a creature. This makes her wonder, as that area was supposed to be safe and monster-free. The monster soon sees her and charges toward her. She screams in terror. To protect herself, she launched an attack toward the approaching creature, but it deflected the attack as if it were a paper ball. This only scared her more. Klaus continues to walk cautiously. He's puzzled as he hasn't seen anything yet. However, there are monsters above, watching him closely. Then his level 3 presence detection makes him feel something. The ghouls descend toward him. Wielding his sword, he wonders where they came from. At close range, he managed to strike, but his sword immediately shattered. While the ghoul took no damage, another one kicked him, sending him flying away. These creatures are not mid-level, they are at least high level. While he's still bouncing on the ground, Miriam is already approaching. She asks if Klaus is okay, and he says he was just thrown. He apologizes, saying there's something wrong with that dungeon. Looking at his system, he confirms that the ghoul's name isn't on the list of creatures. If the creature didn't take damage, it doesn't appear on the creature list. Otherwise, throwing useless stones would make this skill divine. Now without a weapon, he doesn't know what to do with these monsters. Murren tells him not to give up just yet. She also needs to apologize as she couldn't secure a safe escape route for them. Her intuition still hasn't signaled this as a life or death situation, so they shouldn't give up. There's still a way out of this. Standing up, they are determined to get out of there. They are undoubtedly very dangerous ghouls. There's one in front of them, and two more in the rear. Her intuition goes off desperately, and Miriam pulls Claws away as a ghoul bursts from the wall like a locomotive. They can only watch as the creature destroys everything in front of it. Now they have four powerful enemies. The last one to appear is already staring at them intensely. The one with sword-like arms starts slashing at things too. Another one can even break rocks with its bare hands, and it has a menacing appearance. A large rock is lifted from the ground by one of the ghouls, which it throws far away as if it were nothing. That display of strength has them shaking with fear. Hidden, they have no idea what to do now. In front of Claws is a hand harpoon, which he picks up. Whispering, he says that lately he's getting used to situations like this, and Miriam gets his attention. She points to the exit they were going to use. It's now blocked by the rock that was thrown. The situation has gotten even worse, yet they are not being attacked. Maybe they're just toying with them or deciding who gets to eat first since they devour people. Miriam is terrified, certain that she seems more appetizing than Claws. Jokes aside, she wants to know what they'll do. They need to take advantage of the distraction to decide whether they'll flee or fight. Auto-return will take more than 100 hours, and Miriam makes it clear that she won't be able to keep up. He can't use automatic battle yet, but Miriam knows that's how he obliterated the Yeetus. Claws said that when he tried to attack the ghoul, it took no damage at all, which frightened Miriam. Without a doubt, the other three are just as strong as she is. Noticing a thinner spot on one of their hands, he realizes that even a small cut will do. The palm of that ghoul has a burn mark. She says it must have been from her fireball, which it deflected easily. Exchanging glances, they seem to come to a conclusion. They remember that ghouls are weak against fire. No matter how strong they are, weaknesses are still weaknesses. She's still apprehensive and asks if Claws will be okay, as she doesn't want him to perish. Even so, she left her shelter, preparing another fireball. She launched it at the ghoul's back. Claws was ready to intercept the contact. He went right behind the fireball. With the fireball close to him, he brought the tip of his harpoon to it. The attack passed through his weapon, which was now on fire, while the distracted ghoul defended against the fireball. Claws managed to make the harpoon wound it. Now the system says he'll take 24 minutes to finish off the four of them. The condition was met. He tells Miriam and asks her to wait for 24 minutes and 13 seconds. This surprised her, as with the Yeetus, he needed 10 minutes to handle 8 of them. The time practically doubled, with half the enemies, and Claws finally activates automatic battle. Miriam is worried because he doesn't even have an adequate weapon and is now surrounded. Reacting quickly, he parried one of the blades. He held one's hand while kicking another's foot. He confused the last one with his cloak. It was too impressive for Miriam not to be left speechless. The obese ghoul was being sliced up by its comrade. Claws' movements made them attack each other. 24 minutes remain and Claws is surrounded. The ghoul with blades attacks him fiercely, but he dodges everything. When he's almost hit, he parries the blade with one of his hands. Meanwhile, another took the opportunity to attack as well, but Claws grabbed her dress firmly, making her change the direction of her attack. This way, he managed to make her dismember the monster. Claws skillfully held the remaining hand of the creature. Twisting it, he threw it to the ground. Meanwhile, the big-headed ghoul advanced with an attack. However, Claws moved skillfully, using the creature in his hand to defend himself. She would take the blow to the face instead of Claws. Then the fluffy ghoul noticed a blade coming its way. With that move, one of them was now headless. Its head rolled across the ground like a soccer ball. There were 4 ghouls initially, and now only 2 remain. Even as monsters, their expressions show fear and surprise. Miriam is still hiding in a safe spot. Her expression is the same as the ghouls, one of utter disbelief. It's true that their attacks may do almost nothing against the monsters, but if there's something that could damage them, it's their own fists and blades. Even so, it's highly unlikely that anyone would have thought of this as a strategy. This is something only Claws could do. She starts running, and he still told her to get out of there. Claws said she needed to find an escape route while he handled the combat. It's a division of tasks. The most important point is when the battle ends, because you might defeat them and reinforcements could arrive soon. The automatic battle can't be activated continuously. But Miriam is uncomfortable with the difference in risk they're both taking on. He smiles at her and thanks her. He said they're not in a life or death situation yet, and he trusts her intuition. He only hopes she trusts herself as well. Just because it's not a situation like this doesn't mean she shouldn't have a bad feeling about it. Even if he wins, after the Yeetus, he was out cold for an entire night. And now his opponents are even more powerful. She's going to clear the escape route and hopes he doesn't die. Even if he passes out afterward, she'll carry him out of there, before the bad feeling becomes a life or death situation. Now there's only 1 ghoul left. Only 14 seconds remain. Claws is prepared to end the fight. Furious, the ghoul jumps toward him. As before, Claws dodges the attack. The creature makes a headlong rush, revealing that it actually has a mouth full of teeth, which are heading straight for Claws. He wasn't hit by the ghoul, but while dodging, he landed on a block that had been cut. He slipped as he made contact with it. However, he managed to land supported on the ground. Seeing that he's down, the ghoul charges once more, but Claws' hand had reached one of their blades. He's just waiting for the creature to approach. The two are now on a collision course, but what the ghoul didn't expect was that Claws wasn't unarmed. He decapitated it, and as soon as he did, time was up. The lifeless body is still rolling on the ground. Claws coughs up blood due to the effort exerted. He falls to the ground, extremely exhausted. Meanwhile, Miriam's intuition is ringing intensely. Looking back, she's confused by what her intuition sensed. Her intuition had triggered for a moment, which made her look back concerned. The life or death situation is approaching her from behind, but it could also be below them. This made her worried about Claws, and she immediately headed in his direction. She runs down the corridor. As soon as she exits, several ghouls appear as well. After the battle, Claws is worn out and powerless, lying on the ground. He then pulls out a high-level potion to recover. After drinking it, he thanks himself for having bought one. He thanks Tierra's advice. The gold coin was very well spent, and this makes him remember something. Now he has 4 bull jaws. Even after putting in so much effort, it's still insufficient for them to complete the challenge. The situation is complicated. Maybe they should consider leaving. A quiet sound makes him look back. The exit door had been closed. He looks at it, somewhat intrigued. Hearing sounds on the other side, he asks if it's Miriam. Through the peephole, he notices that there are more ghouls on the other side. This surprises him. Someone says they aren't ghouls since that door has a powerful protective seal against them, and that his skill lacks common sense. Claws then comes face to face with a person being carried by monsters. She just smiles at him. Claws knew that voice sounded familiar and soon recognized Micah. She is one of the main members of the Special Forces. Looking at him, she shakes her finger in disapproval. You shouldn't call her Micah, let alone you. She points her finger at him. The creatures start marching forward. Claws is now surrounded by countless of them. They keep advancing toward him. He doesn't know what they are, but he's sure they're neither zombies nor ghouls. Then he remembers her ability, which gives life to inorganic matter and controls it as she pleases. He heard this from her 3 years ago, and she preferred puppets in human form. But what's in front of him is clearly a body. She turned the bodies there into her minions. Now they're her personal bodyguards. She used those remains as sustenance, and he says Mika will be punished for it. Ghouls fed with bodies become stronger, and she gave them several bodies. Immediately, Claws remembers the strength of those creatures. Still intrigued, he asks what she means by this, and if she really fed the ghouls with bodies, to which she confirms the ones he had fought earlier were created by her. They looked like discarded bodies, and soon Claws will end up like them. Because he's going to rest forever in that place. He can hardly believe he has to go through so much trouble. And on the other side of the door, there are even more creatures. Her plan was to have the ghouls kill him, so it would look like an accident. But given what he's done, it's better to crush him with sheer numbers. This enrages him. They're not just creating obstacles for him to pass the exam now. Mika says that if he dies, she'll get a bonus from gain. But he refuses to die in that place, and he can now use the automatic battle. Referring to the bodies, he asks them to hold on for 5 minutes, and he'll free them from this villain's clutches. Surrounded and with no choice, he activates his ability. Claws will clean out Micah's puppets from that place. Her ability is life manipulation, and she can grant it to inorganic objects. In other words, she could give life to half the planet. Not to mention that things controlled by her naturally become stronger. And the more similar to human form, the better the ability's effectiveness. There was a simulated battle between them 3 years ago. He was crushed by a puppet that barely reached his knees, and now the power level is much higher. There are 49 bodies being strengthened by her power. There's no way he'll survive her attack. He's too arrogant, so a small fry like him should just disappear. However, using the blades he got from the ghoul, Claws is slicing through the crowd. Heads are flying everywhere like popcorn popping in a pan. He's simply hooked on separating heads from bodies, and he's already managed to obliterate a total of 13 of them. Mika is breaking out in a cold sweat as she never imagined he'd be capable of this. He points his blade in her direction. Determined, he advances on the remaining puppets, much to Mika's utter despair. Desperate, she orders her archers. They unleash a volley of arrows in his direction. Even so, he dodges them all with ease. She's furious because he has a useless skill, and yet he's still alive and fighting. Claws kicks the feet of one of the puppets. He passed through them, confiscating their heads with his sword. This made the ridiculous one fall flat on her face. He remains standing in the same spot as Mika watches him with a bleeding nose. She can't believe she's being overwhelmed by someone with such a useless skill. There's blood on her clothes, her own blood. It's simply humiliating. Enraged, she slams her hand on the ground. She's consumed with hatred, determined to finish off Claws. She's already beyond level 100, an A-rank adventurer. Now she's going to kill him without a doubt. She doesn't care about making it look like an accident anymore or even being labeled a criminal. After all, everything will be erased as she has gained support, who comes from a very influential family. She doesn't even care about Gain's ambitions because with money, anything can be done. Everyone will do as they're told as long as they continue to control the guild in the capital. They can do anything and he'll die there without even becoming a mid-rank adventurer. Even if he begs, she'll kill him and step on him while smiling. She'll ignore all his cries of pain. Claws dodges her attack while continuing to kill the puppets, and Mika falls flat on her face once more. He's finally taken care of all of them. Time runs out, and he opens his eyes. And he's met with an unusual sight. Since he was unconscious, he looked at her on the ground, asking if she had said something. She can't understand how he dodged, much less how he was able to finish off her puppets. 3 years ago, he thought he'd never be able to overcome her skill. But now it was far too easy. His body isn't even tired. Thinking back, he might have even overestimated her. Mika is even more outraged at being seen as inferior to him. Gain says that skills can be categorized by levels. His own is very good, said to be legendary and belong to heroes, something fit for a king. He believes Mika's is also very good, and he hopes she won't betray his expectations. That way, she won't be at the same level as a certain piece of trash they know. She grits her teeth in rage. It's unacceptable for trash like him to underestimate her. After all, he's just inferior and he used his skill once again. She orders her puppets to awaken, the ones she left on the lower floors. One of them begins to reanimate. There's a huge door in front of him. Behind that door is a tremendous danger, with a warning that prohibits passage for those not at least S level. Mika ordered her puppet to open the gate to hell. A massive hand destroys her puppet, and from the shadows an eye glows. Claws can sense that something sinister is happening. He has no idea what's going on, and Mika smiles maniacally. She says it's his fault for being arrogant, even with a worthless skill. She had to use her last resort, which her clan deemed too dangerous. She asks if he knows why that dungeon has never been purified. Because the boss creature is too strong and was sealed behind a special door. Behind it, there's an endless cycle of ghouls devouring each other, and the strongest among them became something impressive. The demon ghoul is coming now. Hearing his terrified claws, he asks what she's doing, and Mika jumps for joy because she left one of her puppets on each floor. And she made them open all the doors, and as soon as the ghoul smells them, it'll come straight there, pointing her finger mockingly at Claws. Only he will be devoured by the creature, she says, showing a pendant, adding that she has no intention of dying with him. She's cautious, and that amulet was given to her by Gain, and it's very powerful against the undead. With it, she'll be completely safe. Not noticing that it was cracked, the amulet shattered completely. Both of them were surprised. Meanwhile, Meram is using her fireballs outside. Angry, she tries to clear a path to Claws. Finally, she manages to open the door. She screams desperately for Claws, saying there's something behind him. The demon ghoul is already there. Its mouth is dripping saliva at the sight amid soon-to-be snack. He looks at the threatening creature and lets out an intense scream of terror. The creature opens its mouth, rising up, revealing a snake-like body. As it settles on the ground, its weight makes it tremble. It roars, completely furious and intimidating toward the humans. Claws wonders what that demon ghoul is, because it's on a completely different level from any creature he's seen. There's no way to use automatic battle. As soon as he attacks, he'll surely die, and Meram emphasizes that he should run away, as the creature is too powerful. Meanwhile, Mika is smiling. She was wondering if Gain had tricked her by buying a fake amulet. Thin threads seem to emerge from her hands. They're restraining the creature's movements. That's the secret technique of her skill. Looking at Meram, she asks if she's a friend of his. And still a girl, but Meram insists on saying she's actually a feminine-looking boy. But that doesn't matter now. Friends of trash are also trash. Not to mention he's incapable of realizing the difference in power between their abilities. She can manipulate the life she created, and if that life is devoured by a monster, she can control the one who ate it. Hearing this, Claws can't believe it. And since the demon ghoul had devoured her puppets, now it's under her control. She can control it freely, even though she can't do that with creatures above her level. But here in this dungeon, there's nothing higher than her level, which is 117. Now he should understand the situation, and it's time to finish off the two of them. They should feel privileged, as this is a secret known only to the main members of her clan, because this way she can bring monsters to places they shouldn't be, or simply make them kill people. Meram's intuition goes off, and she says it's the creature's arm that's coming. The control of the creature has shifted. Mika was struck hard by the creature. While being crushed, she realized that its level is higher than hers. The irritating and despicable girl went flying through the air, breaking several walls in the process. Now the ghoul's attention is on Claws, and he stands almost petrified with fear. That is an SS rank creature, level 208. Meram tells him to run non-stop, no matter what happens. She tells him to keep trusting her. Claws looks at his friend, panting. As he gets closer, he notices she's pointing at him. There's no way he could be her target. He's a bit hesitant because he doesn't know what's going on, but he says he'll leave it to her. Then Meram gives a wide smile. Now she's going to use all the magic she has left. Her special attack, the strongest, the fastest. The full power fireball. In front of Claws is a fireball, and behind him an enraged ghoul. He keeps running without stopping, but with his eyes closed. Meram used all of her magic in this attack. Klaus is in a complicated situation, and the ghoul opens its mouth menacingly. It's hungry. He keeps running with his eyes closed. Unexpectedly, his foot catches on something. He has no idea what he tripped over. Off balance, the blade he was carrying went high up. The fireball passed through it. That was enough to cause an intense burst of light, which ended up blinding the ghoul's eyes. He has no idea what the sudden flash was, much less what hit his sword, as it was heavy. Not to mention he hears slicing sounds close to his ears. Merrim extends her hand to him, asking him to hold on. The ghoul slams into the wall with force, but its jaws missed both of them. They're safely on the other side of the door. It slams into the wall, furious. As a last resort, it tries to reach them with its tongue. They immediately recoil at the sight of it. Merrim asks him to close the door quickly while it's still stuck. Together, they struggle to close the door, but the ghoul's face is blocking them from closing it. Their efforts weren't in vain and the door finally closed. Safe, they can only hear the ghoul's terrifying, enraged sounds. That noise alone is enough to keep them terrified, until silence suddenly falls. They look through the peephole to the other side. There's no sign of the ghoul. It must have left. Looking at Merrim, she says her intuition feels nothing dangerous now. Relieved, she hugs him, as she believed they wouldn't survive that. Only then does she realize what she did and becomes embarrassed. In the end, the result was bad and they failed the mission to collect jaws. She makes a face because the magic restorative potion tastes awful. However, they managed to get the demon ghoul's jaw, which fell after it tried to cross the magic seal. With that, they have all 5 and completed the task, but Klaus says that's not the case. The others remain on the other side and now the door is blocked. He had even separated them. She asked what the bag looked like, and he described it as medium-sized, slightly round. They soon realized he didn't trip but had kicked the bag with the jaws. Now they're both extremely pleased. They wave to each other, completely happy for completing the task. Merrim wants to know why he's looking at that sword and if he intends to save the weird one, but Klaus says it would kill him. He thought of returning the item to her city, but Merrim says that weird one isn't the type to die easily. Someone as mean as her wouldn't give them the luck of already being dead. Meanwhile, the ghoul is looking for her, ready for a snack. It roars furiously, and the weird one knows she's being hunted. From above, someone says she's too reckless for trying to hunt high-level ghouls. As the elf rescues her, she says she's definitely very stupid. She complains, saying she's an A-rank hunter and not a piece of luggage to be carried around. Dropping her slightly, she asks if she wants to be left behind and that now she's not an adventurer, but rather a suspect. She's been acting as a spy at the guild master's request and was only following Claus to protect him. She doesn't know what history he has with him, but she knew they would show up soon, and they've been doing whatever they want in their guild's territory. So it's good she prepares herself because they're going to get everything out in the open, definitely. As for Claus, she can't say what kind of luck he has, as he can be unlucky enough to encounter these creatures, yet lucky to come out alive every time. Either way, she's going to congratulate him for today. It's inevitable that he'll fail the exam. Their time is short, and Merrim suggests using automatic travel while she's on his back to get there quickly. That day, the sound of resentment echoed throughout the city. It came from the church that serves as the catacombs entrance. In the dungeon, the ghoul continues screaming in rage. They wonder what that sound is, as it seems to come from a demon straight from hell. Inside the Adventurers Guild, they hear the sound and feel apprehensive. They don't know what it is, but they know it's coming from the church on the city's outskirts. The receptionist has a horrible feeling about this, thinking if Gain and his lackeys are involved in it. At the window, he only gives a devilish smile. Even his companions are terrified by that sound. He reassures them, saying the sound came from the church where Micah is. Glenn wants to know what she did because, even from a distance, it feels like they've entered an S-rank dungeon. In fact, it feels the same as being in such a dungeon, and they soon realize she did something forbidden due to the risks. Gain isn't worried about that as long as the objective is achieved. He assumes she did it as a precaution, but the mercenary warns that it's going too far. To think she complained so much before leaving. She was tasked with creating powerful monsters there and would even get an extra bonus. Gain smiles because he wouldn't spare anything on this mission. That's why they're the best. Smiling, he only regrets not giving her an artifact to record what happened, as he would love to see it. Hearing him, his companions wonder if he's crazy. Gain left the room to get a breath of fresh air. Meanwhile, they wonder what exactly happened between him and Claus. Maybe it's related to the incident, says Lane. For her, maybe it's just a hunch. It happened 3 years ago when Claus left the team. She asked if it was okay since he went so far just to recruit that boy. But he said he didn't care, as the skill is as mediocre as the spirit of the one who possesses it. But there's one last thing she could help him with. He showed her a poison dart, an assassination item that never misses its target and makes the target pass out in just 10 minutes. However, the person won't die if they get the antidote in time. He even used his time-stopping ability so she wouldn't interrupt him. Watching him, she saw that he activated the automatic return, as he always makes a strange pose. They'll return without fail, and he had already mentioned it would take 2.5 hours to get to his house. Gain wants to know what will happen if he collapses in 10 minutes. As he threw the dart, it slipped from his hand, spinning high into the air. In his carelessness, the poisoned dart fell back into his hand. He started flailing like a child, telling Lane that he'd been poisoned. This is the story she told the others as it happened while Gain's time-stopping ability was active. Glenn realized that Gain's time had lost against Claw's ability, but the girl corrects him, saying it was Gain's mistake that let the dart slip. Lane also agrees that it was a mistake, but the issue is how Gain views the incident. He should have hit his target, since he was using his ability and an item that never misses. For someone who believes in the superiority of abilities, he must see this incident in a particular way. To him, Claus is just a pawn in the path of a king, and there's no way a king would lose to someone insignificant like him. And every time he thinks of him, he gets this strange feeling. But he tries to reassure himself, imagining Claus must be inside a ghoul's stomach by now. Then he looked out the window, pleased with the thought. His path to supremacy would be as clear as the blue sky he was looking at. However, outside, Claus is passing by, riding his donkey. Of all the things he could see in life, that is certainly the most terrifying for him. It's impossible. There's no way that could be Claus. Gain had received a message from Mika about Claus's trip to the catacombs and that he would encounter fortified ghouls. As he thought, someone opens the door and says the timing had been perfect. He looks back with fear in his eyes. With Mika chained, she says she has something to discuss with him about the promotion exam. There were only seconds left before the exam time ran out. The automatic return ended and Klaus opens his eyes. He's in front of the reception counter, having finished with just a few seconds left. He celebrates because they actually managed to reach the guild in time. The donkey starts braying in the meantime, and the receptionists tell him he can't bring an animal in there. The head receptionist thanks everyone who attempted the promotion exam for their participation. There were several unexpected events during that exam, but they hope to have answers soon and apologize for everything. While cleaning the floor, she also says she expects an explanation from him soon. Now they started scoring participants based on the items they collected. They line up in front of the counter. For that number of people, it shouldn't take more than 15 minutes. Miriam looks at him and says the exam is over. She wants to know what he's still doing. That paper shows what they were supposed to collect, and they needed to choose at least 3. And they ended up collecting the fruits and ghoul jaws. Miriam quickly noticed that the amount of items is insufficient for the 2 of them. However, he's confident and asked her not to worry about it. He'll use automatic collection for that. There are 2 of the items there that will only take him 5 seconds each to get. Being that fast, he'll surely get them from someone. Miriam gets anxious, thinking he's going to kill someone there. He immediately clarifies, saying he's not that kind of person. Nobody understands that he's a pacifist, but remembering everything, that's not what she thinks of him. They don't even need to do anything dangerous, and he tells her to look to the side. Not far away, there's a shop. They're selling some of the items they need there. Claus went over and came back disappointed. Because of the exam, the prices were exorbitant. Miriam asks if there would be a problem, but Claus assures her that the rules don't say anything about buying. The mission is to acquire the items, not necessarily have the skills to obtain them. She looks at the bag, thoughtful. Now she has the items she needs to pass, and Claus congratulates her for it. He hopes she'll accept it as a gesture of gratitude for what she did for him in the mountains. He thought about buying the gold jaws, but they were all out of stock. He'll try again next year. He's already waited 3 years, so waiting one more won't make a difference. People were startled by the sudden noise that echoed in the hall. Miriam had violently punched Claus, telling him, the idiot, not to underestimate her. She did save him in the mountains, yes, and kept his body warm using hers during the night. The girls thought of many impure things because they think both are boys, and judging by the nun's face, she's definitely not going to heaven after this. She then said she had already received enough from him. The adventurers quickly realize who they are. Claus, the veteran rookie, and the solitary Miriam. No one teams up with him because he sometimes casts magic at his companions. She remembered when she was expelled from a team. Even though she saved them, she singed one guy's hair. Not just his, but everyone else's too. But that's how her intuition works, and ignoring it only makes things worse. However, he always believed in her when they fought against the ghouls, and that meant a lot to her, as he made her very happy. Claus was embarrassed by that statement. Even so, he's determined to give her the materials, because if he takes them back, he won't look like a nice guy. In the middle of the hall, they're still arguing. The elf looks at the 2, feeling secondhand embarrassment, and someone asks if they didn't apply as a team. It was explained at the start. Points are shared by the team. That's why everyone forms teams, but the 2 fools didn't get that. At least they can use this to get along better. Charlotte, who's on Gain's team, had already passed. The guildmaster wants to hear an explanation from Gain. He used a letter of recommendation from the guildmaster in the capital as an excuse to come here. Not to mention the numerous acts to sabotage the exam. She says he won't go unpunished for this. Then she calls for Tareen. They're in the interrogation room. She asked if she knew what that was, showing the item with a recording of her saying they controlled the guild in the capital. It's a magical device that records sounds, and they now have several interesting statements from Gain's subordinate within the catacombs. That way they have evidence accepted by the court, which only worsens Gain's situation. That's bad. He definitely needs to get rid of and destroy that crystal. The guildmaster makes it clear that it's a copy. The original has already been sent to the capital for analysis. It would be terrible if something happened to it. Now they just need to wait for the investigation. Gain is sweating with anger and wants to at least call his father as he's being held. Baron Kasha has just arrived, saying that even if it's checkmate, it doesn't mean they've won. Important things should be delivered by hand, and he wonders why the crystal is in his hands. Claus and Merrim are extremely tired, and the receptionist congratulates everyone who participated in the promotion exam. At 2 in the afternoon, they will hand out the new licenses, and there will also be a basic training session, though it could be delayed due to unavoidable circumstances. They continue to wait seated, but it's almost 6 in the evening now. Merrim is irritated by the delay, and she's already starving from having to wait so long. They spent all their money buying the last items and now can't buy food. They start protesting, saying they're very hungry. Merrim noticed there's a girl there too. She's the girl from Gain's team waiting for the snack he said he'd bring. She's the one he was talking about regarding the new member. Looking at him, she introduced herself formally and said she's grateful to meet him. She introduced herself because she smelled him when she looked at him, saying she has a very keen sense of smell. Not to mention she liked his scent because it pleases her a lot. It's like grass that even when trampled refuses to stay down, the kind that never gives up. As she thought, it's the scent of someone strong, much stronger than Gain and the others. Almost in his lap, she invites him to form a team once they get their mid-rank adventurer licenses, which made Merrim uncomfortable. She said she passed the exam with her skills and isn't a mediocre adventurer. Merrim then stands up and asks who she is and what she's doing. She told her to stay away from Claus because he belongs to her, but the girl said Merrim also smells nice. She even likes it, but the more she smells it, the more she realizes it doesn't smell like a man, and Merrim insists that she's a boy. She asks Claus for help, but he completely ignores her. That's ridiculous. Every member is powerful, and Gain has a mythical skill. To say he's stronger than all of them. Meanwhile, they made a deal to free Gain, suspending his team's activities for 3 months and paying 500 gold coins to the guild. Thanks to Lane's warnings about the guild master's suspicions, they managed to act quickly and intercept the evidence. He said it had been a defeat because anything short of a perfect victory is a loss, and that's how they reached the top of the merchant families. So Gain needed to win, as their glorious future depended on his talent. He has great expectations for the boy. The Baron, looking out the window, saw Claus and Merrim walking. He asked if it's really Claus because he remembers him from the castle 3 years ago. He wanted to know why he left as he read Lane's report. He's impressive, and if his feats are real, he's truly a monster. As a beginner, he will certainly rise as a hero, and the Baron wants him for himself. He said his son has no talent sense, which made him deeply angry. He arrives home and she asks if he has a family. He says he has a younger sister, who is admirable, and Merrim wants to know which one is cuter. Immediately, his intuition started going off. She was sensing imminent danger, unaware that Liz was watching her from the window. With a knife in hand, she greets Claus, saying the exam took longer than expected. She wants to know who this girl is and if he was late because he went on a date. While waiting for a response, Merrim says she's a boy. She serves them a snack to eat with tea and is happy that he passed the test. Happy, he shows her the badge he received. And Liz congratulates him on the achievement. After many years, he had finally achieved a goal. And since he returns safely, she'll prepare a banquet for him. Merrim was worried about her intuition, but realized that Liz is a good sister. She can thank Merrim for helping her brother, and for being his friend since Claus only has a donkey as a friend. She asked her to keep looking after him and wanted to know if there was anything she'd like to eat. She tries to say something to Liz. She can't remember the name of the dish, but Claus remembered it's Karelian stew, asking if Liz knows the recipe. He said the sandwich filling he shared with Merrim had the flavor of that dish. Liz immediately remembered how it's made, and now she's going to make that stew. But Merrim asked her to wait. However, they're missing some ingredients, and Claus said he'd go buy them. He's already on his way out, and Merrim doesn't want to be left alone with Liz. As soon as he leaves the house, Liz says they should have a chat, a girl-to-girl talk. Merrim says she's a boy, but Liz says, based on her hands and bone structure, she's definitely lying. Then she asks if she'd like to take a bath. Merrim's eyes automatically lit up. They keep the water with glowstones, which is almost a luxury for commoners. Liz is helping Merrim with the bath, scrubbing her back. She says she can do it herself, but Liz insists on helping, saying she's filthy. Not to mention she's pretty dirty after dealing with Yeetus and ghouls, which surprises Liz. She said Merrim has a smell she can't ignore as a girl, so she offered the bath. She didn't want Liz washing the front of her body. The poor thing collapsed with that hard blow. The size difference between her twins and her board is impressive. Taking such a bath was amazing. Lately, she's been so broke she only bathed with a cup. Liz acknowledges it's hard being an adventurer, and she'll soon have her skill assessment ceremony. Merrim says it's tough, but it all depends on luck, motivation, and especially effort. She wants to know if Liz wants to be an adventurer. She says that after hearing her brother's stories, she wants to see the world too. Moreover, she wants to be able to accompany him on his adventures. Hearing that, Merrim realized she must be a genuinely nice girl. Her intuition must have been wrong. Then Liz said she needs to stay by his side because the world will soon see her charm. She asked if Merrim doesn't agree with her. Meanwhile, her intuition kept blaring. She says she knows that Claus also knows she's a girl, or they would never have left the two of them alone, and she asked about the night they spent together. She said he handled the twins while sleeping, and soon Claus announces that he's back. Liz welcomes him and asks what he's been up to recently, holding a stick in her hand. Poor Claus was caught off guard by the situation. In the dark night, a huge creature is chained. Gain's team observes the chained dragon. They will undergo an indefinite period of strengthening. Liz commands her brother to kneel before her. She knows what happened between them on the night of the exam and the danger he faced with the Yetis and ghouls. After the incident with the skeleton, he had promised her to stay away from dangerous situations, yet he went into the catacombs on his own accord. Unable to defend himself, Klaus admits he's guilty. As punishment, he should avoid missions for a month. Additionally, he'll have to dote on his sister as part of the penalty. So Liz concluded the judgment, but Klaus would like to appeal. Crying, she asks if it's so hard for him to pamper her a little. He says that's not a punishment, but they need to make money. Indeed, that's an issue, but she won't accept any risk. As a change, non-dangerous missions will be accepted. And she gives some impossible examples, like testing mattresses as things she'd allow. Murin watched everything, realizing that they actually get along quite well. At the guild, he tells the receptionist about the kind of work he could accept. And she tells him not to underestimate her job. That's what she would like to say to him. But they have something compatible, and he probably knows what a special treatment request is. But he doesn't know what this special treatment would be. During the exam, the guild couldn't supervise well, which caused harm to the examinees. Without being able to go into much detail, it's thanks to the work of the two. The Baron had the crystal in his possession, and during negotiations, he asked to take his foolish son home. But they wouldn't allow that, and that wasn't the only evidence they had. Game was completely humiliated before them, and the receptionist gives a slight smile. Thanks to them, a medium-sized guild was able to fight back against spoiled, wealthy children, but she regrets not being able to cut their heads off. In any case, she wants to return her gratitude to them. She asked them to accept this. It's a special treatment request for a guild in a neighboring city. They can bring relatives and all expenses are paid. And if he only clears the water path in his spare time, he can use the hot springs for 4 days and 3 nights. They have medicinal properties and there's a wide variety of them. The job description is simply to clear the water flow. Finally, they arrive in that city, a mission that meets all the requirements given by his sister. Even so, she says she hasn't forgiven his actions completely, and she's annoyed with the way her brother handles it. Not to mention she's worried about his health, as he appeared again as if he'd taken quite a beating. She hopes he'll rest in the hot springs because she'll wash his back as her puberty is blossoming. That's when, reading about the place, she saw something interesting. They have mixed hot springs. This made her mind fill with countless thoughts that don't belong here. But she imagined herself by his side, with an incestuous closeness. Klaus commented that it's been a while since they bathed together, and they even have swimwear there. She's still stuck on the word together. While she's thinking immoral thoughts, Murim just wants to relax in the hot springs for real. The weather is clear there with no clouds. Liz stretches in the hot spring, grateful to be there, because the place is almost exclusively hers and Merim's. It would be great if Klaus could be there, but Merim is adamant in saying she'll burn him with fire if he tries to enter. Not to mention that the men's spring is lower down to prevent them from peeking. Looking down and peeking at Klaus, Liz confirms it's true. From above, she waves at him, which makes Merim uncomfortable. He asks her not to shout because it might disturb other visitors. She says there's no one else there and her towel falls. The sight makes him freeze. She calls him a pervert, while he apologizes even though he's not to blame. It's already the second day of the vacation they managed to get, and that building is almost at the border. Liz is still very embarrassed because he saw her whole front side. But what she wanted, at least, is for her twins to be bigger. He doesn't know what she's doing, and Merim says he needs to be sensitive to women, but Klaus has already seen her naked many times. And to be honest, there haven't been big changes since they were younger. But even without change, she's still the cutest in the world. At least the compliment offset the insensitive comment. She said a surprise attack is unfair, but Klaus reinforces that she's the cutest, no matter how flat she is. Frustrated, she says that in these 3 days together, he'll look at her with a new perspective. She's going to show him what she's capable of, while Merim thinks, embarrassed, that they're both sick. Now that he's finished lunch, he's going to leave, but Merim wants to help him with a task. However, Klaus says it's far too simple. He'll handle it alone, but actually they should divide the task. He'll leave the place with her, especially the mission of watching over his sister. Sighing, at least she knows he can do it without difficulty. And since she's the same gender as his sister, she'll focus on the mission assigned to her. Some girls are bathing. Among them is Liz. Merim sneaks up behind her. She knew that was the knee trick, which from the outside looked like something else floating. Liz wants to know if she really needed to be there, since in that area, the water supposedly enhances beauty and the size of the twins. Irritated, she asks if Merim is there because Klaus sent her, but Merim asks her not to look at her with those threatening eyes. She doesn't like being seen by Klaus as the little sister. She wants to be treated like an adult, but he always treats her like a child. Merim thought it was cute, even though she's only a year older than her. When she grows up, he'll be lost in her charm, breaking down the boundaries of taboo. That's way too bizarre, and Liz asked what she was going to say. She talked about her skill, called intuition, and when it's activated, she hears a beeping in her mind. Her intuition went off before she came here, so it's better if they stick together. Liz wants to know if it's dangerous to be there, but Merim says it happens a lot and she can't say for sure. But since Klaus is with them, everything will be fine. After all, he's the man for the job, and he dealt with the worst intuition she's ever had in her life. Filled with jealousy, Liz wants to know what Miriam the woman feels for her brother Claus. The spring water is clear and warm. Claus continues walking through the forest. The weather is perfect and Miriam had something to say to him as she left to complete the task. She felt something bad there, not nearly as bad as in the catacombs, but it's good to stay alert. But it's just a cleanup mission. A log passes near his head, almost hitting him. Several adventurers are in front of him, fighting a giant slime. He can hardly believe it when he sees it, recognizing that her skill is really impressive. The girl approaches him, asking if he's an adventurer because she's the guide who will take him to the water purification site. Unfortunately, the slimes there have gotten quite large, making the process difficult. She doesn't know why this happened, but it's a medium to high difficulty monster. Maybe it's the area's bamboo that only blooms once every 120 years. It did so last year. Some adventurers that recognize Claus as the veteran rookie, one who took 3 years to be promoted, calling him Claus the Useless. This left him a little annoyed, but soon he noticed something else. He doesn't even know who these people are, which made them a bit upset. Either way, they're leading the rookies who are fighting the slime. They hurry them along, saying this is way too easy, and Claus agrees they should finish this quickly. Then he gave his clothes to the guide. Claus approached the monster, asking what they were doing. They turned to him, a little offended, because they know Claus is useless. Ignoring them, he went up to the slime, but they were worried for him since Claus hadn't brought any weapon. Then the slime formed up to capture him. He's almost hit, but he dodged without difficulty. Then he thrust his hand into the creature. Focused, he started searching for something. As soon as he found it, he pulled it out all at once. Crushing that stone, the slime disappeared. The adventurers who saw this were left puzzled, and Claus asked them to take care of what was left. Still speechless, Claus commented that these creatures die if their cores are removed. This goes for the bigger ones too. It's better to do it by hand than using weapons. The process is a bit painful, but it's a wound that can be healed with low-level potions. Since he was a rookie for so long, he became skilled in that type of task. But that's not all. And with a quick move, he said he'd never hunted a slime as big as that one. Compared to what he's been fighting lately, that's nothing. He's not afraid of the slimes because it's time to hunt. Giant slimes are troublesome monsters to defeat and sometimes develop special abilities. One way to beat them is by cutting their pieces until the core can be easily hit. At least that's what those clowns who called Claus useless had learned. They can only watch as he defeats the slimes with his bare hands. This makes the women admire his finger skills, imagining he might know how to do things with them. They'd love to find out. But the slime is tired of taking so many hits. It releases something intensely around itself. Not even Claus, a veteran at killing these creatures, expected that. The clowns defend themselves. It's steam. Definitely not a good sign. The girls start running as the slime has a special ability. They assume the slime will attack under the cover of the steam cloud. But since one of them tripped, they're now surrounded by the creature. The others manage to escape the cloud and are safe. Claus ended up liking this because no one would see his skill in action. And in 25 minutes, he'll finish off 128 regular slimes and the biggest one. It's time for the creature to die. These are its final minutes. The girls try to defend themselves, attacking. The attack goes through the slime's body, leaving a large empty space. They watch it close up as if nothing had happened. That was definitely ineffective. Now they don't know how to handle the situation as they're surrounded, and the other two must be far away by now. They even feel a bit sorry for Claus. If it's bad for them, imagine how bad it is for him. However, they start hearing intense beeping sounds. Several projectiles are being fired. They hit the slime's body, in precise positions, destroying cores in the process. Automatically, the sticky mass implodes upon itself. The girl takes a moment to realize that the slime has gone to the animal heaven. Meanwhile, there's someone surfing on an improvised board. It's Claus on it, like an Olympic athlete, showing off with his eyes closed and full of charm. Below are the poor girls who need help. While one girl is in disbelief, the nun has a longing look as she harbors hidden desires deep in her being. In Claus's hands are stones he just picked up from the ground. He throws them at the cores with extreme precision. They can't believe what they're seeing him do. The other adventurers realize the slime is fleeing, heading toward the hot springs. Inside, Liz and Miriam, whose intuition started to tingle, begin to feel uneasy. She shouts an alarm that something bad is coming, which makes Liz worried too. Soon they notice something strange in the water, and Liz says it went under her backside. While they're distressed about this, Claus is right there beside them. The slime grabs them, making them panic. But Claus is there, fingers ready to do things they won't remember. Female screams echo through the air. Claus has some injuries on his head and a noticeable handprint on his face. They're already on their way home. Even knowing what happened with the slime, they're still upset. His luck is that only the two of them were there. If a stranger had been present, he might have had bigger problems. Liz says it will be too worrisome if she doesn't keep an eye on him. So she's decided to become an adventurer too. The carriage travels back along the road. Ahead, they see a sign stating the upcoming area is dungeon territory. Miriam doesn't know what that means and asks if Claus can explain it. He says it's the mountain range ahead, a mixed cluster of mid to high-level dungeons. And among them, there's one in particular whose boss is a dragon, famous for casting a shadow over the entire valley. Mervin wants to stop there to see what mid-rank dungeons are like, but he warns it's a big detour. However, Liz says this detour leads to a city she wants to visit. They sell the famous salamander steak there, which is said to be a delicacy. He agrees while Merrim watches, uncomfortable with how well they get along. At the entrance, at the mountain's base, there are gates and walls. Liz doesn't understand why the gate is closed since the city is just beyond it. He looks at the flag, feeling like he's seen it somewhere before. The guards stop them and ask if they're adventurers seeking dungeons. Claus says he's a mid-rank adventurer and wants to know why the gate is closed. The guard says he's only following orders and doesn't know if there's a reason. If there are complaints, they should be directed to the Cash family. Liz remembered that it's the clown's family that harmed her brother and asks how they can do such a thing. The strange girl says that all those dungeons belong to this family, which is why they can do it. While they are shocked, she says it's a coincidence that they've met again. She goes to hug Claus, saying it's been a while since the exam. She jumps into his arms, saying he looks stronger, while Liz wants to know who this brazen girl is. Claus explains that they went through the same exam. Miriam says she remembers Charlotte and told her to stay away from Claus. This makes the girl turn her attention to her. She happily jumps toward her. Claus tries to summarize the story for his sister and says that Charlotte has a keen sense of smell. She can find the rarest item in the exam just by scent, while Charlotte is now intensely sniffing Miriam. She is satisfied because now she understands and recognizes the scent of a brat. Meanwhile, Miriam feels cornered and speechless. She says she's a boy, and changing the subject, Charlotte mentioned hearing about the dungeons and confirmed that the magic stone mine belongs to the Cash family. In fact, that's how they amassed great wealth. They have large hunting grounds, so they acquire many magic stones, and with the money from sales, they buy more hunting areas. These places are usually managed by guilds, which is why they make so much money. But since the place is closed, it's certain they're doing something secret there. Gain took the main members and some mercenaries to the deepest part of the dungeon, and she's already quite bored with having nothing else to do. She proposed they train in combat to pass the time. Actually, she's very bored, and to convince him, she's willing to trade information if he trains with her. Besides, she's curious to see his skill. She heard Gain muttering Claw's name repeatedly as he went to the dungeon. Mrim is already cheering for her friend, asking him to give her a good beating. She said information is essential, and they can't miss this chance. But she's also irritated with Charlotte, not to mention that information about Gain is crucial, given what he did to them during the exam. With wooden daggers, they are prepared to fight. The two are intently watching each other, while Liz and Miriam observe. Liz wants to know if she's strong, but Miriam can't say. She thought she might have been favored by Claws and even asked the guild's supervisor about it. But the answer was that she's genuinely skilled, as someone was monitoring her. There was no cheating. Besides, she's quite proficient in combat, much more than the average novice. But Miriam knows that Claus is also very good, while Liz is already worried and on the verge of tears, not wanting her brother to get hurt. Charlotte takes something from inside her clothes. That's the signal. As soon as the ball hits the ground, the match will begin. They watch the ball rise into the sky. As soon as it hits the ground, it bounces, and a big cloud of smoke forms. They find this unfair on her part. She intends to catch Claus off guard with this move. He places a hand in front of his face to protect himself. The smoke isn't dense enough to block his vision. He sees her approaching. Soon, she'll be within reach, but Charlotte disappears, putting him on alert. While he wonders where she could have gone, Charlotte is already behind him. She had gotten very close to him, disappearing at the last moment, reappearing behind him immediately. Even though he was struck, Claus managed to defend with a wooden dagger but lost his balance. He braces himself on the ground, still very surprised. He threw sand in her direction to momentarily blind her, but it was just a mirage. Charlotte was already behind him once again. He dodges the kick, which was strong enough to break the ground. At his dodge, Charlotte gives a slight smile, pleased that he managed to evade twice in a row. Not even in Gain's training center were there many people capable of doing that without a scratch. She thinks he's good at detecting presences, but Claus asks not to underestimate his solitary experience. Miriam explains to Liz that since he doesn't have a team, he always had to be alert, and Liz is moved by this. He had understood her skill, and thinks it involves space. He saw something opening in his peripheral vision like a rift. He had heard of such an ability, which left the girls amazed by his description. Charlotte smiles as she looks at him, entering a rift and disappearing completely. It's no use understanding the ability if you can't keep up with it. She circles around Claus, leaving him perplexed. This makes it difficult for him to focus on the real. Then he is struck by her losing the dagger he had in his hands. Provocative, she says it was easier than she thought, wondering if her sense of smell had deceived her. Unless he was still hiding something, and Claus thinks she's truly very strong and is quite distant from him. Now she's almost winning the duel, but as she gets closer to him, Claus purposely slips. As he falls, he manages to push her hand upward, moving the dagger away from his neck. He also grabs a part of her anatomy, which leaves her embarrassed. While he pulls her clothes, she kicks in with one of her feet, causing both of them to fall to the ground. However, Claus falls into a dominant position, and Charlotte realizes she has lost the fight. Both Liz and Miriam are surprised by what happened, while Claus has no idea what he just did. Charlotte was pressing him in the fight, using gaps to appear behind Claus. In the last attack, he reacted by slipping, managing to alter the dagger's trajectory and unbalancing her with a kind of sweep. It was quick, and she's already falling. He regained his balance awkwardly, using one of his hands to press her against the ground. Now she looks at him, still not understanding how everything happened. Liz and Miriam watched it all, very impressed. Claws had reacted unexpectedly and with total precision. Charlotte breaks into a sweat, intrigued by him, who is now looking at his own hand, not understanding. Liz shakes Miriam desperately, asking what just happened. She has no idea since when her brother has been so splendid, but Miriam is also surprised. But there's something even more impressive. The movements he just demonstrated to them were very similar to the ones he uses during the automatic battle. It's as if he's adapting to use this without the skill, and Claws has no idea how he didn't fall flat on his face. His body had moved on its own that he realizes Charlotte is still there. She can't hide her reaction from him. With shining eyes, she says Claws is truly amazing. Then she asks him to move away from her a little, doing a forward flip and landing inside one of her gaps, exiting on the other side, heading towards Claws. The way she landed almost gave Liz a stroke. Sitting on him, she asked if he'd like to go one more time. Desperate, Liz says this is harassment, and Charlotte tells Claws she loves him. With a huge bump on her head, she says she got too excited. She always goes overboard when she gets excited. On the other side, Liz wants to know why Claws took so long to react. As promised, she'll tell them what she knows about Gain. She can't say for sure, but she has a hunch about the matter. Inside the palace, Claws says that at this rate, it won't work. He asks what level they are at, and everyone is around 117 to 120. They haven't progressed in a while, and their personal skills are already at level 5. The experience from rank of creatures is practically insignificant to them. They discuss the existence of dragons while Charlotte is dozing off. Smiling, he says that the fool Mika gave him a hint, a way to break through this limit and surpass the others. Claws asks him if Gain really talked about breaking the level limit, so he really hit the barrier even though it's only been 3 years. Miriam realizes this is the reason they are in the dungeons, and Claws says that if that's the problem, he has no other option. Liz then asks for their attention, and yells saying she's not an adventurer like them and doesn't understand anything. To break this barrier, high-quality magic stones are needed. To level up, it's necessary to defeat monsters or absorb the essence of magic stones. But there are limits, and depending on the individual, it can be anywhere from level 80 to 120. Those who reach this limit name it the S-level barrier. The only way to get past it is by defeating an S-rank monster, obviously without dying. The most famous of them is the Calamity Dragon, capable of destroying entire kingdoms. Meeting is the same as dying. Liz doesn't believe it can be defeated, but Claws states that there are people who have defeated monsters like that. Charlotte says that's probably what Gain is trying to do, but there's a problem with his strategy. There's nothing that powerful in that mountain. Miriam and Liz want to know what she's doing throwing herself into Claws' arms. The clue she has is that, but she doesn't know exactly what he does in there. Inside the dungeon, he knows they need to defeat an S-rank monster, but a monster like that is hard to come by. However, they can simply make this monster appear. Mika managed to do something similar by feeding the ghouls. A similar process was what created the demon ghoul. In other words, it's entirely possible to create an S-level monster from scratch, as long as there is enough food for it. The wyvern keeps feeding non-stop. They look at the creature with satisfaction. It had already grown significantly just by eating a few thousand. Suddenly, a loud cracking sound is heard. It was the wyvern shedding its skin. This is how reptile-type monsters evolve, becoming bigger, fiercer, and stronger. Now it has 2 heads instead of just 1. The massive creature spreads its wings in a menacing display. On the ground, they celebrate until the wyvern notices them. It immediately launches a fierce attack in their direction, which is blocked by a barrier made from the mercenaries' shields. Someone screams desperately for Mika to control the wyvern. She is quite tired. She can only distract it with monsters, but it no longer notices the goblins and kobolds offered to it. Gaten says Mika will do it because she claims she doesn't have a trashy skill like those of weaklings, and that she wouldn't betray his expectations. After getting very frustrated, she called them a piece of trash. The creatures she was controlling pulled the chains even harder, making the wyvern restrained. Even so, it stood menacing in its prison, launching powerful attacks skyward. This made them quite pleased. If the creature escaped, it would certainly be capable of devastating a kingdom. But they're deep within the dungeon, and with such a massive body, the creature would never escape. There are no flaws in his plan. The wyvern is just a bird in a cage. When it's ready, they'll hunt it and rise to S level. With that, they'll break the limit. But he didn't notice a crack forming. Chains with hooks at the ends are thrown, intending to trap the monster and prevent it from escaping. Finding his body, they are pulled tight. The men have to exert a lot of force to keep it restrained. All of this was done so that a weakening drug could be administered. Yane acknowledges that the creature is strong, and with one more molt, it should reach S rank, while Glenn can't believe it was just a normal wyvern before. Gain smirks mockingly. That's no longer a wyvern, but rather a friend of Calamity. This left his companions thoughtful, and he asked them if they had ever heard of the Calamity Dragon, a black, multi-headed dragon that ravaged the capital, only defeated by the hero and his companions. Looking back, they are startled by what they just realized. Gain says what they have here is of the same species as the Dragon of Legends, the Lord of Dark Knights and Arc Wyvern. The legend will be reborn once again so they can gain experience from its sacrifice. As soon as it sheds its skin again, they will kill it. The weapons are already prepared. From the Cash Family dungeons, 3,000 more monsters are coming to serve as its food. Gain orders the monsters to be fed with magic stones and ignores contrary advice. He orders once again to hurry up. Meanwhile, high in the cave, the crack grows larger and larger. The creature's eyes shine with intensity. A thunderous noise is heard in the mountain, and wings beat under the sky illuminated by the full moon. Local residents heard a loud sound coming from the mountains, and from that day on, the nearby dungeons were destroyed by something gigantic. A few days pass after that, and Miriam knocks on a door, waiting anxiously outside. It's Claus's house, and he opens it for her. It's been a while since they've seen each other, and she says the moon is beautiful. She asks if she could stay the night there, but he closed the door. She knocks on the door again, calling him rude and saying she has no money, but he advises her to camp in the fields. But she says that would put her chastity at risk, and Liz asks if that voice is Miriam's. It seems she's in trouble, but Klaus says she needs to be punished for what she did last time. She used her ability in a casino to win money, and they left with a huge debt. That wasn't nice for them. The use of magic and skills in casinos is forbidden, and they were kicked out. Liz realizes Miriam was blinded by money. Outside, Miriam says that Klaus also gambled, which awakens Liz's Karen side. Inside the house, she chased after him. Now inside, she asks if Miriam wants to seduce Klaus with that pair of twins. He sneaks a peek, but Liz notices. After the misunderstanding, Miriam states she's not there just because she has no money. Klaus wants to know what it is, and she says she had a very bad feeling coming from afar, similar to the one they felt in the catacombs, so she thought it best for them to stay together. Frightened, he asks if it was the demon ghoul or something of rank S, and she says yes, but also mentions it doesn't seem quite like that. However, her intuition has been failing lately, though Klaus asserts that when it comes to danger, she's never been wrong. He wants to know when it will happen, but she can't say for sure, and at the window, Liz asks what that is. She's hearing a sound, but it doesn't seem like a bird. It's like something scratching glass, so Miriam, in a panic, rushes to her as she feels her intuition. Throwing herself to the ground with her, she ordered Klaus to do the same. From the window, they can see the creature approaching. Their house is completely destroyed. He screams desperately for Miriam. Then he looked up where the roof of his house used to be, facing an enormous dragon. Its powerful wings beat as it destroys another building. That night was when the wings of the nightmare descended from the sky. Its huge mouths were flaming, launching fireballs in all directions, completely devastating the place. The residents try to flee and find shelter to protect themselves from the destruction. Still paralyzed with fear, Klaus wants to know what it is he's seeing. The creature's roar fills the air, emptying everyone's courage. It's a dragon. Miriam is worried about Liz. She had hurt her head during the destruction. Klaus yells her name full of concern, but soon Miriam throws herself towards him, covering his mouth so he wouldn't make any noise and attract the dragon there. She says that if it noticed them, they'd be dead, and Liz's wound is superficial, not too serious. They quietly goad her. Miriam says that even so, Liz needs care and a quality potion would be enough. Fortunately, he still has one. Miriam starts administering the potion to Liz. Immediately, right after the first sips, the effect begins to take hold. Still a little drowsy, she complains about the taste of the remedy. She recommended adding more sugar and milk to the ingredients. He says she needs to mature her palate, and Liz asks what happened, so he asks her to take a look. Excited, he says she didn't eat the salamander steak, but if they deal with that, she'll have a huge buffet. As he shows her the creature, Liz is more terrified than ever, to the point of fainting again, which makes Miriam scold Klaus for what he did. But he says this is good because if she were awake, she might make noise. Now Miriam wants to know what they'll do and asks what he meant about the buffet. She thinks Klaus is going to take down the dragon, but he calls her an idiot, saying he'd definitely die. Thinking they had only two options, run or wait, and Klaus prefers to wait there, because the creature's eyes shine even in the dark of night. He doesn't know who the idiot was that did this, but they definitely angered that dragon. Miriam notes it's still black and two-headed, like the Calamity Dragon described in Legends. At this rate, their city will be devastated. There's nothing they can do but pray it leaves. Unexpectedly, someone starts attacking the creature. This draws its attention to that person. Below, Klaus wonders who the fool is who threw fuel on the fire. Then the dragon began to gather energy in its mouth. It's preparing to bring the entire place down. With a wicked grin, Klaus is approaching the city. The special forces are advancing. The creature's mouth is open menacingly, concentrating enormous power in front of it. Klaus can only watch as he feels helpless. He doesn't know what that ball of light on top of the dragon is. They're the flames of calamity. The legendary dragon did this in the capital near the palace, and the crater became a lake. It's the most powerful attack of the Calamity Dragon, the Flames of Calamity. An attack capable of entirely changing the landscape of a place. Klaus laments as he wishes he could use the automatic mode on it. Then Miriam notices something. She said her intuition is getting weaker. She has no idea what's happening. Meanwhile, high above are Klaus and his group. Charlotte is with them and prepares to jump off the bird. She bravely jumped toward the danger. Now she's diving with determination. She launched a few attacks with her daggers, which are heading toward the dragon. However, the creature immediately reacts to her attempt. Charlotte joins her daggers. As she's about to use her unique space-controlled ability, she opened a rift in front of her, and another one above her head. Watching from a distance, Claws recognizes that ability. Charlotte is confident while they are still terrified. Now knowing that it's her up there, they also start worrying about her. With the dragon's attack, a powerful crash can be heard. Claws ignores the danger and heads toward her because he knows it's risky. The shockwave left her disoriented and she is falling. Claws tries hard to intercept her fall. He's almost able to prevent her from hitting the ground, but she quickly recovers and avoids hitting the ground by using her ability. Claws is left speechless, as he made an effort for nothing, but she won't waste this chance. So she opens another rift and throws herself into Claws' arms, hugging him affectionately and thanking him for saving her life, while Miriam gets furious about her taking advantage of Claws. Charlotte recognizes the voice and says it's the brat, but Miriam angrily says they're not friends. Then she notices that Liz is injured, but Claws says it's nothing serious, and Charlotte wants to confirm it was caused by the Arc Wyvern. He finds the name strange, and Charlotte apologizes because she tried to bring it down before it reached the city, but she couldn't. Additionally, the reason it's enraged is due to Gain and the Special Forces. They are also in the city at this moment, descending from the sky toward the creature. They approach strategically, and the Wyvern senses their approach. Looking up, it roars furiously once again. Then Gain uses his time control ability. Everything he points at with this ability freezes in time. Taking advantage of the opportunity, Glenn comes with his atomic rupture, which was effective and opened large wounds on the creature. Even an S-rank creature, there's nothing his fist cannot break. Another girl is controlling the time, causing ice to form in the atmosphere, aiming at the dragon and using her attack on it, the cryogenic bomb. Frozen, she hopes the reptile will enter hibernation. Gain is quite pleased and says they heard the distress call and came to resolve it since they're the most powerful team. They are the Special Forces. Claws can only watch and think that absolutely no one called them here. He then authorizes his members to take a performance-enhancing additive, a booster. They all drink the product. It's capable of increasing all attributes for a short period, but it has intense side effects, and it's recommended that an adult doesn't take more than one per day. Strengthened, they move toward the weakened dragon, determined to show how strong those with unique abilities are. The dragon tries to rise from the water it had fallen into, but Gain is very intent on finishing off the creature, and he used his time control ability. Soon, the creature couldn't move. Carmen also advanced toward the dragon. She used her ability to make the water freeze. Glenn appears once more with a powerful blow. He destroyed one of its wings, so the dragon can no longer escape through the sky. Gain orders the mercenary commander to attack as well. He uses devastating force to strike the creature. Meanwhile, Lane orders the archers to aim at the dragon's wounds. They shoot their arrows, which drag chains along. Once embedded in the creature's flesh, they trap it with the chains. They pull, making it almost unable to move. One of the heads looks back and sees Gain approaching, who is quite confident that the battle is over, and he orders his team to prepare a final attack. The creature is completely immobilized. Meanwhile, far away, Claws simply observes. Miriam says that they're not too bad after all, as everyone there has at least A-rank abilities. And according to what Charlotte said, they were responsible for the destruction and Liz's current condition. She mentioned that they were deep in the dungeon doing something, and after that, the dragon emerged and escaped. Claws is furious, as his sister is still unconscious, while he wonders what the guild is doing. Miriam adds that the legendary dragon, even when killed by the hero, had gotten angry and caused even more destruction, so they should be cautious with this one. But she doubts that they're the type of team that cares about the city. And even though they seem to be winning, her intuition is only getting worse instead of calming down. Claws pats her back and asks if it's a cramp, which makes her uncomfortable. She kicks him repeatedly, while Claws says he was just trying to lighten the moment. Then Miriam tells him not to let his guard down because this won't end so easily. They don't know what's going to happen yet, and the creature raises its tail. The mercenary leader is certain he had cut off the dragon's tail. Unexpectedly, he has to protect Gain from the creature's attack. But the impact is so strong that they are thrown far away. Only then does Gain realize what is happening. It had shed its skin once again, and now it has 3 heads. Claws and Miriam managed to see everything that happened. In front of them, the dragon had shed its skin. Besides gaining another head, it's now even bigger. This time, Gain did something completely foolish and put many lives at risk. He is frozen with fear. Glenn also calls him in a panic, asking what just happened. Now the dragon has regenerated all its wounds and has become something even more sinister. He wants to know if this was part of Gain's plan because they're back to the beginning. But he is in shock, not understanding what his eyes are seeing. Mika had warned that feeding it quickly like this is dangerous, and they should observe for a while. They don't evolve automatically. There's a period before it happens, and it may have already fed enough. That way they could lose control over it, but Gain is confident they can defeat it. Now he realizes the dragon is at a level they can no longer surpass. This is simply unacceptable to him, and he thinks he can do something. So he clenched his fist in rage and used his skill, and froze the dragon's time, saying that a mere winged lizard cannot oppose his team. And full of confidence, he ordered the others to finish off the monster. But they know he can only contain it for a few seconds, and there's another problem. However, he commands them to go right away and doesn't let them finish talking. And the dragon is already able to move again. The dragon quickly completes its good deed of the day by hitting game with its tail. He was even lifted off the ground by the recoil of the impact. He didn't die instantly only because he was using an amulet that prevents fatal damage once, an S-rank item. But the dragon is determined to carry out its good deed, using its 3 heads to incinerate the fool. Thus, more protective amulets break from fatal damage. Gain is completely devastated and nearly destroyed. His companions know he's on his last legs. This time, the dragon executes a devastating attack that melts the ground, obliterating all the unsuspecting ones in the area. It roars furiously, while the members of the special forces are out of combat. Claws and Murim watch in terror as the creature achieves victory. Even an A-rank team was useless against it. It's the end, the city is doomed. Then, from a rift, Charlotte falls near them. She apologizes to them for failing, while Claus tells Murim to get a potion for her. With what remained of her strength, she asks Claus to flee because that monster is far too powerful. Opening the system, he says there's still a chance. However, the creature needs to be registered first. Murim is scared because she realizes Claus' plan is to fight the creature, which is simply massive and too destructive. Literally a piece of despair. This is beyond reckless, and she won't allow it in any way. But even if they run, they won't be safe, and her intuition already says that everyone in the city will die. And there's one more thing. Liz loves this city. She would be sad if she woke up and found nothing left. Murim can't hide her worry, which appears as tears on her face. Soon she notices Claus's legs are moving too much. He's trembling with fear as well, and he says he needs her help. He needed a little push from her. He wants to know if her intuition became less intense after he said he would fight, and she told him that her ability isn't that convenient. But the truth is, it did lessen a little, and that's all he needed. As he advances, she asks Claus to wait. There's no margin for error in this plan, and she wants to know how he's going to strike the first blow. Charlotte stands up and asks if that's all he needs. Then she slashed the air with her ability. She wants to know if he has mithril or orichalcum weapons. Otherwise, they won't be able to get past the creature's scales. It seems they'll need to find another way to do this. Charlotte opened a rift in the space above the dragon. They look at it in amazement because they are in the same place, seeing the powerful dragon through that window. It's so focused on the ground that it hasn't noticed what happened above its heads. The only solution is to aim at the creature's eyes. Powerful creatures are less vigilant because they are overwhelmed by their own strength. She tried to attack the dragon's eyes but almost died in the process because she attacked from the front, relying on her speed. Handing him an item that will make him float, she says he'll have a better chance if he attacks from above. It's up to him now to decide whether or not he will. Unlike Murim, she says she'll support any decision he makes. The idea of free falling is terrifying, and he still has to make a surprise attack. Murim sighs and says she'll help too, as they talk about attacking the eyes from above. Her intuition is relieved. His chances of success are higher this way. She wants to know if this has boosted his courage. Excited, he thanks her for the words. Charlotte likes the scent coming from Claus now, a mix of fear, courage, and determination, something only a hero would have. Now he looks determinedly at the rift that will take him to the dragon. They'll support him and ask him not to die. Confident, he says he'll leave Liz in their care. Then he jumped into the rift. In free fall, he's heading for the impossible battle. As soon as he exits the portal, adrenaline takes over. He's falling toward the dragon. As expected, it has its guard down, but the heads are moving a lot. On the ground, Murim prepares his spell and Claus counts on her. Now it's up to Charlotte to open a portal as well. She reluctantly does it as she was called Little Hair by Murim, and soon the portal was opened. The attack heads toward the dragon. It's up to Claus now to time it right. The glowing sphere captures the creature's attention. They watch it closely, and Claus is already near one of the eyes. He wields his sword to wound the creature, which was hit directly in the eye. He had managed to strike the first blow. He immediately opens his system to activate auto-combat, and time is being calculated. For a moment, nothing appeared for him. But to Claus's delight, the time was soon set to 3 hours and 22 minutes. Now he needed to use the ability immediately, as all 3 heads are focused on him. But he's paralyzed with fear. This is bad. They notice that the fear is caused by the dragon's killing intent. But using a rift at the last moment, Charlotte appears to make him react. This prevented the dragon from devouring him. Murim was holding her by her clothes and managed to pull her back through the portal. Now it's up to Claus to use the time he gained. However, they can see that he has fallen to the ground, and he's injured, seemingly unconscious. They're desperate to see that the creature is about to crush him with one of its paws. But his hand soon reaches a sword that was there, pulling it from the debris. With a quick reaction, he cut one of the dragon's toes. This left both Murim and Charlotte completely astonished. That sword is a legendary item used by a dragon slayer, an Essa item, and the dragon looks at Claus, while he makes a hand gesture, inviting the creature to attack. He assumes a battle stance which will last for 3 hours and 22 minutes. The dragon is furious with what just happened and prepares its tail to deliver a devastating blow. Klaus is almost hit, which makes the girls anxious, but he begins to use the sword. Using it, he managed to cut the piece of ground he was standing on. As it collapses, it takes him out of the dragon's tail's path. By a small margin, he wasn't hit, and during his fall, he managed to land safely, leaving a cut on the creature's tail, which enrages it even more, causing it to unleash a flurry of piercing attacks. Claws, in addition to dodging the blows, is able to counterattack. The girls can hardly see anymore as the dust starts to rise intensely. The dragon watches Claws closely, as he once again stands before the creature in a combat stance. Charlotte, who hadn't seen Claws' ability before, is very surprised. She then asks Miriam why he's moving like that, and Miriam tells her not to get too close. She knew he pretended to be dead when he fell, but she wonders if it's really a coincidence that he landed so close to the sword. Not only is he seeing all the movements, but he's also countering skillfully. It's almost as if he can see the future. Miriam says this is Claws' auto-combat, but she doesn't know how it works. Not satisfied with the explanation, Charlotte poked the girl with one of her fingers, which annoyed her, but Charlotte only did it because it seemed like a vulnerable spot for poking. She wants to know if he does anything else besides seeing the future and moving well, because that's not enough to defeat the dragon. Then it pointed at them once again. The dragon's wounds are healing. Even its eye is no longer injured. Superficial wounds are ineffective against it. Even if he's using the hero's sword, it's useless if it doesn't strike vital points. But Miriam looks more closely at him and doesn't see the sword. He's holding a stick, and Charlotte wants to know where the sword went. Claws points forward. The sword is buried in front of the dragon. The ground starts to give way as it had been cut, and the dragon loses balance, falling directly onto the sword. In fact, it ended up falling in a rather unfortunate and vulnerable way on it, almost pitifully. Certainly, that was the most excruciating pain it felt in its entire life. It let out an extremely audible roar of pain. Miriam says there's something else too. The automatic combat makes Klaus fight as if he's facing opponents he's already battled. It's like an automatic victory since he always wins these encounters. The creature's eyes now shine menacingly. It's determined to destroy the one who's attacking it. Around it, there's a lot of blood on the ground, while Klaus signals with his finger that it won't win. The creature does something that causes a shockwave, making the air displacement push the girls back. They don't know what that was. The atmosphere had changed. The creature had been treating them like ants before, but its eyes are red now. This is the true murderous intent of a dragon. Even so, Claws remains unfazed. Charlotte doesn't know why he keeps his composure even while in such a desperate situation. Not to mention that he's armed only with a stick. He taunts the dragon once more. It charges at him full of fury. It uses one of its paws to reach for the place's debris, throwing several massive rocks at Claws, which leaves the girls in a panic. However, he jumped and balanced himself on the stick, while the rocks passed by him. He also managed to dodge the tail covered in rocks and kept evading while Miriam and Charlotte watched. The dragon prepared itself once again, ready to unleash a fatal attack. It continues to destroy the place completely, but Claws uses the stick to maneuver himself in the air. He manages to land heroically after the destruction, picking up the stick that had returned to him. He remains confident as the dragon watches him. All the girls can barely keep up with the battle anymore. After this, they breathe a bit more relieved. But watching this definitely isn't good for the heart. Although her intuition hasn't faded, she believes everything will turn out fine, until Charlotte shouts for him not to go in that direction as the dragon is leading him into a trap. Now he's cornered with no chance of escape. That's bad. The creature is intelligent enough to set a trap, but Charlotte can't reach him with her spatial rift. No matter how skilled he is, the dragon is going to use a technique to deal area damage in a devastating manner. It takes a breath to release a scorching wave of destruction. Miriam watches everything, breaking into a cold sweat. But above all, she wants to know what Claws will do. With the stick, he breaks the rock behind him, and inside it, there's a despicable and cowardly person. Gain, who is hiding there in terror, finally realizes what's happening. He panics as Claws hides behind him. A powerful attack is being prepared. They don't know what Claws is going to do now, since he's been cornered. Only a miracle could prevent the situation from worsening. Gain looks at the powerful dragon paralyzed. The attack is unleashed and tries to freeze time. This causes the creature to stop for a brief moment. Indeed, it had stopped, much to Charlotte and Miriam's surprise. However, Gain could only hold it for a few seconds. That was all Claws needed. In that short time, he was already armed to keep fighting. He had taken Gain's swords, who calls him a thief and says those items were extremely expensive. Without hesitation, Claws hurls the swords at the dragon, which leaves Gain desperate since they were all very costly. All of them are aimed at the creature, one for each head. He was no longer able to keep time frozen. Able to move again, the dragon realizes what's happening. All three blades embed themselves in its necks. The beast roars in pain once again. Its chest starts to swell as if it were a balloon. Meanwhile, Claws grabs Gain and slams his head into the ground. The creature explodes violently. Claws hides from the wave of fiery destruction, while his friends watch anxiously. He stands firm as the creature burns behind him. With this last attack, he cut off the creature's breath, causing it to explode. Charlotte thought it was amazing because he knew where Gain was and used the swords in combination with Gain's ability, which froze the attack for a few seconds. Not to mention the precise location where the dragon was hit by the blades. A divine technique, he managed to pull it off at the perfect time. Pleased, she says that she's now in love with Claus. Miriam says that indeed, Claus is incredible, but she won't let her have him because he's her partner, while Charlotte is just a stranger, and she warned her not to hug Claus after that. If that's the case, she'll just hug Miriam then. She even suggested they all do something together, the three of them, and maybe even Claus's sister could join. Finally, Liz opens her eyes, asking for her brother. Claus looks back, auto mode is still running and the dragon is still alive. They were walking around town and Liz saw a set of pots made of mithril. She was very impressed, thinking they must be for cooking a dragon. Claus said that if he ever hunted a dragon, they used those to cook it. Liz slowly wakes up after being out for so long, but the beast's roar soon puts her on high alert. She runs anxiously, looking for her brother, until she sees something. Claus is facing the dragon, which is burning, leaving Liz worried about the unlikely scene. The girls look at her cheerfully, asking if she feels better. While she's frantic, Miriam says he's protecting the city that Liz loves. And at the moment, Claus is doing extraordinary things. The battle isn't over yet, and Miriam's intuition is intensifying again. The roar they're hearing is definitely not the dragon's death agony. Miriam feels it will attack once more, and from the middle of its wounds another head emerges. Now the creature has 4 ravenous heads. The two of them stare coldly at each other. Miriam can't believe the dragon shed its skin again, while Charlotte confirms that there are now 5 heads, and from what she heard, it needed food to keep evolving. There's no food nearby and has already done this twice. The dragon is pushing itself to the limit. It may even be weakened, but the problem is its wounds have healed, and Claus has no weapons to use now. Then he raises one of his hands. This, besides being unexpected, leaves them puzzled. They wonder if it's some kind of sign language. He keeps gesturing, making different motions, until he closes his hand. Liz seemed to understand that it was for her to get something. It's inside the backpack, it's valuable, and she took it as a precaution. She asked him to wait just a little longer. With the bag in hand, she asked if that's really it. Claus confirms, which leaves Miriam and Charlotte quite surprised. They want to know how they managed to communicate just now. But if it could be put into words, she understood him because of love. That response left them both flustered. Now she just has to take the items to him, and she's unsure how. But Charlotte has an idea. Because of the power of love, she won't fail. Miriam doesn't want to rush, but her intuition is telling her the dragon will soon attack. Then the dragon begins to roar furiously. Liz doesn't know how her brother will use these things against the creature, because they're just kitchen utensils. Now that they know that, Miriam and Charlotte are genuinely anxious. The dragon's 5 heads are furious. The portal opens behind Claus and the kitchen utensils fall to the ground. He picks them up, prepared to continue fighting. Once again, it's just the two of them in combat. With 5 heads, no matter how many fall, if even one remains, it will be able to finish the job. It has given up on its legs and wings. All it wants is to take down Claus, who is now facing a berserk dragon, using only the mithril kitchen utensils, which cost a small fortune of 12 gold coins. In their eyes, it's simply impossible for him to emerge victorious, since he doesn't have real weapons to defend himself. But then they remember there's a knife among the utensils. Unlike the other pieces, it's not just mithril coated, but entirely made of the material. There's only one small problem with it, literally small. The blade is the size of a finger. Claus puts it in his mouth. Now there's only one thing they can do, which is to believe that Claus will be able to come out victorious. They hope he wins because the creature is already weakened. Miriam feels the battle will end soon, as her premonition suggests. Liz clasps her hands, wishing her brother luck. That is definitely the final part of the battle. First, he needs to hit the inverted scale with the knife somehow. Claus points to something. He keeps pointing in that direction, which is opposite to where the dragon is. The girls don't know what place that is, and even the dragon is curious, until its eyes find something. A frightened and weakened Gain. He's pointing his skill at Claus, hoping he will be burned and destroyed by the creature. Claus remains still, pointing at Gain. The dragon now shifts its focus to the fool, who finds himself the target of a devastating attack. There are no more distractions in their battle. He no longer has items to dodge damage. He really is an idiot. However, Charlotte notices that the creature is learning. The attack is weaker, but in exchange, it's much faster. Indeed, it's a notoriously intelligent creature, but they quickly realize something there. Claus had completely disappeared. It was too fast, and the 5 heads are looking for him. Then he appears on the dragon's back to the surprise of the creature and his friends. The other heads turn toward him, fierce. Then Claus starts climbing up the monster's neck. He launches himself into the air, surrounded by the 5 heads. While he's in the air, the heads follow him. Then he throws the spatula he was carrying. It flies and hits the part of the neck that was weakened by the previous attack with the sword. The beast rides in agony as the sword returns to Claus. In a desperate reflex, one of the heads tries to bite the young man, but all it manages to do is bite itself. Claus holds firmly onto the kitchen utensils. He uses the ladle to grip onto the creature's spikes, dodging an attack aimed at him in the process. He jumps onto one of the heads, which is also tricked and ends up attacking itself. With claws between them, the monster is missing its attacks and hitting itself. Such is its ferocity that it managed to tear off one of its heads. This left the remaining heads completely enraged. As he runs along one of their necks, Claws positions himself with the instruments in hand. He waits patiently to be attacked, but the head approaches him hesitantly. It can't bite him, and it seems to be making a great effort to do so. Amid the various attempts, they ended up tangled as if they were in a knot. The creature roars again, frustrated. Now the girls watching everything realize that this is too absurd to be believable. There should be a limit. Charlotte doesn't think it's that hard to believe as the dragon increased its number of heads in a short period. This is definitely challenging for the dragon. Liz notices it's not over yet. Just look into the dragon's eyes. They're still focused on something. In the distance, its tail is approaching. It's preparing to launch a surprise attack, but Marin reassures Liz. Claws wouldn't be hit by an attack like that, and indeed, the dragon missed its attack. However, from the sound it made, Charlotte imagines that the creature's target was something else. It had cut off the remaining heads, leaving only one now. The creature's determination is so great that it got rid of the heads that were hindering it. With greater mobility, it prepares to attack with its tail, once again. Claws takes a defensive stance, but he's hit nonetheless, being thrown far away. His body crashes intensely against the rocks, leaving his friends concerned. The dragon's head advances, determined to end the battle. There's only one thought in the Arc Wyvern's mind now. The armored fool who kept it bound is now dead. The wretches who walked with the fool and obeyed him. They are all dead too, but above all, this person, who pierced one of its eyes and repeatedly dodged its tail, besides piercing the underside of its abdomen, making it feel a terrible pain. It is the Lord of the Skies, yet it can't take flight due to the pain, forced to crawl on the ground like a worm. After that, it was exploded and had its heads tied up. That small being before it needs to die, and killing him is all the dragon wants to do now. With its tail, it hopes to end the battle once and for all, launching Klaus far away. Poof hits a wall of rocks. As he coughs from the impact, he drops the knife he was holding. The girls are anxious about this, and the dragon wants to use the opportunity to win. However, with the tips of his fingers, he manages to grab the small blade, throwing it at the creature, which ricochets and hits one of its eyes, causing it to change its trajectory. It bites a huge rock, and all that runs through its mind is the need to kill. Klaus is lying on the ground, and in the rock the dragon had bitten, there's a sword embedded. Charlotte immediately spots it. That's one of the swords he took from Gain and used to make the dragon explode. It was the only one that missed the target that time. The debris is flying toward Claws, and conveniently he grabs the sword that met his hand. He stands up once again, determined. The dragon looks at him, impressed by the resilience of this small being, who is now advancing toward it with a mithril weapon. The blade is getting closer to it. It pierces its scales effectively, but it still needs to go deeper to reach the dragon's fragile interior. The dragon roars in fury, and Claws lets go of the blade as the creature brings its tail closer to the human. They realize the strike was too superficial. Now they're worried about him, who is once again unarmed, but he still has a hammer with him, and with a single blow he will drive the sword even deeper into the creature. He strikes the sword with force. The sound of the impact echoes through the clearing. They watch him happily, while the auto battle time finally ends. Claws steps on the ground. Only 5 seconds remain. Behind him lies the dragon's body, which has no more strength. As the time of his ability reaches 0, an aura begins to emerge from the creature's body. It is absorbed by Claws, who levels up multiple times. He finally opens his eyes and feels his body collapsing. There isn't a part of him that doesn't ache. He falls to the ground, almost incapacitated. Everything hurts, and it's not just muscle pain, there are fractures and more. But it seems to have worked. He looks to the side and sees the dragon's head, inert, undoubtedly lifeless. Realizing what he's done, he raises his hands to the sky, celebrating his victory, until he notices Liz coming toward him through a spatial rift. She's about to fall onto his completely injured body. She hugs him tightly, worried, saying he did something very stupid and dangerous. Claws struggles to stay alive as his whole body is in shambles, but he had no choice but to fight the monster. She's happy everything turned out fine despite her worries, and Claws apologizes for making her feel that way. Hugging him, she says he's amazing. He's the best, and meanwhile, Claws thinks he has no regrets. Now, Miriam and Charlotte are also arriving, and they're about to fall on him, whose body is nearly obliterated. They argue as they make him feel pain, but someone is watching them. It's the elf who has been spying on Claws at the guild's request. To her, they're hopeless, and she confirms the information to the guild that the dragon has been neutralized. Despite everything, the dragon slayer is fine. A new hero has been born in the city. At the guild, he receives invitations to join the Order of Knights in the Meg Brigade. They want to get into the building and find out who the hero is, but they're blocked as stealing guild members is prohibited. A big commotion is formed outside, until the doors close, preventing them from entering. Inside, people couldn't stop whispering for a moment. They notice that Klaus is being treated very well, and a rumor is already spreading. They just can't believe it was Klaus. It's not possible that he subdued the Dragon of Calamity. Meanwhile, he is very proud of his achievements. Thanks to the levels he gained, he was unconscious for only 3 days, and upon waking up, his world had changed completely. Everyone wants the Dragon Slayer, and he's loving all the attention. His time has finally come, and Claus wants to shout to everyone that the Dragon Slayer has arrived. The Guildmaster asks if he's sure if he wants to do that. It will only increase the attention on him, but Claus doesn't seem to mind. Miriam says that at this rate, he'll end up being killed by Liz, who hates it when he does dangerous things. Realizing this is true, he gets discouraged, so the Elder says she called him there for another reason. The transfer for that has already been decided. Gain has been arrested, shackled with an iron ball tied to his feet. He and all of his companions are now criminals and are being transferred to the capital's prison. As the guard clears the way, people comment that it was their doing that created the dragon. Outraged, the people wish he would be executed for what he caused. Gain yells at them to shut up, claiming there's no evidence he brought the dragon to the city, saying they came there to defend them from the beast, and they should bow before him. This enrages the crowd, which begins throwing stones at him. After some struggle, the guard ordered them to stop, as it was enough. The guard says they have a witness, Mika, who was rescued from the dungeon. She was furious about being abandoned and now holds a personal grudge against Gain. It remains to be seen how much she is told. But in the crowd, Gain spots a familiar head of hair. Then he shouts for Claus. Claus ends up turning and looking at the arrogant Gain, who smirks maliciously. He says Claus barely survived and wouldn't still be here if he had activated his ability in time. He got lucky, and Gain emphasizes that Claus is useless with a useless skill. However, without remembering what happened, Claus asks if he did something to him. This leaves Gain enraged in an uncontrolled way. He starts yelling furiously until he's hit by one of the guards. The guild leader announces that Charlotte has also been sentenced and must do hard labor in a dungeon. It also seems that someone is helping Tyrion in a sneaky way. Now they are heading to this dungeon, and Claus will take Liz along since they are without a home. Liz is very upset with her brother and orders him to bow before her. Now she's working at a restaurant. Several travelers are ordering food, and there's a rumor that you can eat dragon meat there. It appears that someone in that place has connections with the Dragon Slayer, and the travelers hope to taste this delicacy before leaving the city. Outside, Miriam and Claus are sitting on the ground in total silence. Liz looks at them furiously. Miriam wants to know what he did this time, and Claus says he learned from the guild about Charlotte's situation and decided to go to the dungeon as soon as possible. However, Liz's clothes are different, and he complimented her for it, and she says it's just her part-time work uniform. But she quickly gets annoyed and says she won't be fooled by him that easily. They start arguing while Miriam notices how well they get along. Liz is working to help with household expenses because she cooks very well and will certainly be a great wife. Hearing this from Claus makes her happy. She sighs deeply, while lamenting, sitting down next to them, who are now having a meal. Indeed, she is worried about Charlotte, but much more about her brother. Even if she's not guilty, she fears that if Claus helps her, he'll also be seen as a criminal. It's true that he just killed a dragon, but that doesn't mean he can go straight into an advanced dungeon. That's completely dangerous and reckless. She keeps scolding him, and Liz says that since she isn't one of the main members, her punishment was milder. They learned this from the guild leader, but they didn't have as much information as Liz seems to have. She learned this from a frequent restaurant customer. The woman was sure on money, so Liz gave her a generous portion of food and got the information she needed. Her informant said that if they really want to help Charlotte, it's better to hire someone to do it, preferably a veteran thief who knows the place, that way it could be done. These people can be found in underground organizations or even legally, but it's risky either way. Miriam realizes that Liz is truly a strategist, and indeed, having a guide makes perfect sense. Liz wants to know if he knew this, and Claus replies that he isn't called a veteran rookie for nothing. But there's a flaw in this approach. It's hard for a loner to have connections, which makes Liz sad for the suffering her brother endured. Even so, Liz is greatly concerned if it's just the two of them going, but Claus is confident they'll figure something out. If that's the case, she won't allow them to go alone. Then someone calls out to her. It's the elf Tiara who called her, asking her for a bit more food. Even leftovers would do, and she'd do anything for it. She knows many things, as an intermediate adventurer, knowledgeable, a veteran, and would do anything. It seems they found the guy they needed. Then she listens to their mission to rescue an innocent friend, and they need to do it discreetly and quickly. For this, they would need her help, and she claims to be very good at what she does, and she's not entirely opposed to it. All this for a friend, and it's not a dungeon free of danger. And indeed, they need a guide, otherwise the hunters will become the hunted, so she agrees to go with them, as long as she gets another meal like that one. But apparently, she already has a debt of 32 gold coins at the restaurant. Liz drives the elf to the manager, but she asks them to wait just one more day, as she still has something to take care of. Something extremely important, as Liz had just turned 15. The next day, they are inside the church where the ritual takes place. Those who were called must form a line, and everyone else should remain silent. Liz is finally called by the priest. She steps forward to be examined. He places his hand on her head. Maren realizes that Liz had been so worried about so many things that she had forgotten about this. The elf will be working on this, as it's also important to the guild. She will be the security, and aside from Liz, the other rookies must be protected from those with ulterior motives. This way, the tragedy of C won't be repeated, but they don't know what that is. Outside, Claus waits for the ceremony, feeling very heavy-hearted. He feels useless for forgetting such an important day for his sister, even though she had also forgotten. Miriam sneaks a look inside. The rookies are being taken one by one to another room, all because of what happened a few years ago, the tragedy Elf had mentioned. A young man named C received a unique ability and was immediately harassed by people with bad intentions. Miriam asks if he's that boy. He stands up angrily, saying he's the dragon slayer now, and those who trampled on him should respect him now. To prevent this, the ability is announced privately, and it's up to the individual to decide if they want to announce it publicly, which is why they have guards. It's not an entirely misguided motivation. Even with all their support, there's an ability here that alone can handle a calamity tier. Although there are many users with unique abilities here, they are rare and appear once every 10,000 people. So the probability of Liz having something like that is small, and she approaches them happily. She says they've matched because her ability is called Quest Marker. Just like her brother, she also has something unique. Outside, the bodyguards manage to keep recruiters from entering. Her hearing really is very good, but the elf is uneasy. She can't believe what Liz just said.